Hi, everybody. Long time no chat. It's been a month since my last live chat. So I said I was going to do 2 member live chats and 2 public live chats. So I did a member live chat yesterday. This is obviously the first public live chat. And since some people actually do things on Sundays, I'm doing a member live chat tomorrow, Monday at 8 p.m. New York City time. Tuesday, I'm doing a public live chat at, again, 8 p.m. Eastern, New York City time, just for people who couldn't join today. It's just the same thing. So I apologize. I was on vacation. I went to a few places, including Ireland and Italy, Rome. I never know which way to go. So this is I rented 3 apartments because I have this idea like 10 years ago to walk up to strangers in supermarkets and say, I'm a horrible cook. Would you teach me your best recipe? So I decided, why not start it in Rome, learning some Italian dishes? So this was one of the 3 apartments I rented based on the kitchen. And I filmed 9 episodes, which hopefully will start premiering as Cooking with Strangers in maybe mid-September to late September. So I apologize for not replying to a lot of YouTube comments. Unfortunately, I got COVID on the way back. So I have COVID right now. Unfortunately, that's not fun. But here we are. So I'm about to review the latest updates from the past month in the case since July 24th. So yesterday I did, hi Marshall Dove, I was just thinking about you yesterday. I haven't heard from you in a while. Um, nice to see you. So yesterday I did a members live chat where I do my usual PowerPoint summaries, and it's 42 minutes. So I'm about to play this 42-minute file from yesterday's member live chat. And after that, I will get to your comments. So I'm going to be starting like 45 minutes behind comments. So here we go. Nice to see all of you. Here we go. I'll be back in 42 minutes. So if you know what's been going on in the past month, go do something else and come back in 42 minutes. Here we go. I've done a Delphi live chat in a month, so I have an update that is about 44 slides and takes about 42 minutes, covering what has happened in the Delphi case since July 24th. I did a members only live chat on Saturday, and this is the recording from that where I review my PowerPoint summaries. I showed this same review at the start of Sunday's public live chat, but I have a members only live chat on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and also a public live chat on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, where I will not review these summaries. So that's why I'm uploading it separately. If it sounds like I have a cold, it's because I got COVID on my return from Italy. So here we go. Okay, so my last live chat was July 20th. So July 24th, correspondence to and from the court was filed. It said only the initials KMS. So it's unknown what initials those refer to, but people are wondering if it was possibly Kelsey Siebert or Seibert, Libby's sister. Not sure what it was about. The following day, Judge Gull issued an order. She approved the defense request to present up to 5 minutes of a mini opening statement to the jury panel prior to voir dire, which is the jury selection. The day after that, July 26th, Gull also issued an order where she was denying 2 requests from Indiana TV stations to broadcast the 3 days of hearing. So it seems like she is not going to allow the trial in October to be broadcast. So next up was the big news from the past few weeks. From July 30th, 31st, and August 1st in the Carroll County Courthouse, they were supposed to review 7 different issues, but on one of the days, the defense removed their request to suppress Rick's second statement, which was referred to as his October 26, 2022 interview with Holman, where Rick was arrested soon after. The total list is the defendant's motion to suppress, state's motion for admissibility of Rick's confessions to Dr. Walla, a psychologist at Westville Prison, defendant's motion to compel and motion for sanctions, defendant's motion to vacate the safekeeping order, which is where Rick was being held in a prison instead of a jail, the state's motion in limine, and finally, the defendant's second motion to dismiss and the state's response. So there were 3 of these motions addressed on the first day, July 30th. the safekeeping order, motion to compel and sanctions, and defendant's motion to dismiss. First up is defendant's motion to vacate safekeeping order. McClellan said the safekeeping order cancellation request was only so Rick could be closer to Rosie's office. I agree Rick should be close to his attorneys, but I think Cass County Jail only allows video visits with family and attorney, so not in-person visits. Also, medical and mental health services are not as frequent at county jails as they are in prisons. So we'll see if Rick's condition improves. Gull asked if the statute gives her the ability to order Rick to county jail under safekeeping or only to the Department of Correction. Rosie says she can order Rick to a jail. So I wonder why this was not discussed in June of 2023 or earlier. Why didn't Gull and her team research the county jail option last year? Rosie previously said that in February 2023, he contacted the Cass County Sheriff to see if he has space for Rick. I just don't think it's really acceptable that it took Gull and the judicial system 1 year and 9 months to figure out where Rick should await trial. Something just seems wrong with our system. So Gull decided on day 3 to allow Rick to go to Cass County Jail, and he reportedly smiled when she said that he's out of prison, and so he's going to await his trial at Cass County Jail. That was the end of that one. Also, defendant's motion to compel and motion for sanctions. A motion by the defense to force the prosecution to turn over discovery within 7 days of them receiving it. I want to know, how is there new data 7.5 years after the murders and nearly 2 years after Rick was arrested? The defense wants sanctions against the prosecution for how they handled evidence. Defense attorney Jennifer Auger said the team has received 26 terabytes of data, which includes more than 48,000 files. She told the court many of the files are labeled with only numbers, making it difficult and time-consuming to determine what is in each file. The state is handing over reports after the defense deposes people, so then they have to re-interview them, and it is a waste of time. I agree that it is not acceptable, and I'm concerned that law enforcement was not organized for 5.5 years before Rick was arrested. So if they didn't have their stuff in order, how were they conducting a proper investigation? The defense invoice to drive to Georgia to get a copy of Brad Holder's Facebook photo cost $12,000. I don't understand, and I don't think anybody else understands how that cost that much money when it could have been emailed. So stay tuned for possible more details on that. McClellan said his team has spoon-fed the defense and done their job for them. But if these files only have numbers, how is law enforcement finding them? Investigator Mullen is the one who is organizing it before giving it to the defense. So how is he accessing it and categorizing it? The defense does not have Google geofence warrant that explains which device IDs match which names in these other reports. So it seems like the prosecution is not really handing over stuff that is easy for the defense to follow. Celebrate is one of the most popular phone extraction software and was updated in 2024, and law enforcement performed new extractions, including Libby's phone. So I'm not sure what that revealed, the latest extraction from 2024. Continuing with the motion to dismiss, BH's Facebook photo mimicking the crime scene was posted in 2012, so 5 years before the murders. Murphy stated that there was an undeniable link between Delphi and the Rushville Odinists, but later said they found no evidence to place any of the Odinists at the crime scene. Baldwin tried to prove exculpatory evidence was withheld from the defense team. Holman said the murders happened on February 13th between 2:30 and 3:30 on Ron Logan's property when Allen said down the hill. So obviously Jerry Holman thinks Richard Allen was bridge guy. BH's work time card showed he checked in at 4:55 a.m., took lunch from 12:12 to 12:42 p.m., and then checked out at 2:45 p.m. And then he checked in at the gym in Logansport at 4:08 p.m. To me, it makes no sense that BH would drive 30 minutes from his work to Delphi, arrive around 3:15 in Delphi, like the cemetery or something, then walk to the crime scene for 5 minutes, watch the ritual murder for a few minutes, and then drive to the gym. This does not even fit with Todd Click's theory that the murders were random after Abby and Libby saw the ritual and made fun of it. So I don't know, this Odinist stuff is just not adding up to me. Continuing with the motion to dismiss, the defense discussed Libby's phone ping at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th when 15 text messages arrived on her phone, after not getting any messages for many hours. I want to know, was her phone physically turned on by someone's finger, or did it just connect to the tower and download messages? There's a really big difference. The data on the phone may show the battery levels over time and what happened at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. The phone was on the ground under Libby's sneaker and under Abby's body. So I think that was the killer trying to stop the phone from either making a noise while ringing or preventing its ability to connect to a tower to show the location of the phone and the girls. The defense asked why there were 101 phone extractions of other people, but not BH, who had a rune drawing on his hand, similar to sticks found on Abby's body. I added, the defense needs to give it up with the BHBS. He was not there, and they have never shown proof that he was, that he orchestrated these murders, or a logical reason why he wanted them murdered. I just feel like it's really unethical of the defense to keep putting BH's and PW's names out there, saying they were the ones who murdered these two girls, when the defense can't show any solid evidence that they did. They're just trying to prevent Rick from looking guilty, and they're just blaming these people where there's no evidence that they were there. Next up were emails between Jay Abbott from the FBI and Doug Carter early on in the investigation that stated that BH was a suspect, but Holman disagreed. This is not really a trial of how competent law enforcement was at following leads. Some people are focusing on all these other things, but not acknowledging that Rick's noon to 1:30 timeline does not add up. Rick is the one on trial, not Indiana police departments, which they should be after this, but not at this time. So next up was the following day, July 31st, defendant's motion to suppress and state's objection, and the state's motion for admissibility. Before they started, Judge Gull said jury selection will be starting October 14th, and then the trial starts October 18th. So the first step was the motion to suppress. Between March to June 2023, Rick made at least 61 incriminating statements with details to inmates, guards, and the warden at Westville Prison. The defense argued Rick did not make the confessions voluntarily, but was coerced by guards and suffering from mental illness, so they want Gull to suppress the statements from the jury. Rosie said that U.S. and Indiana Constitution violations have occurred. Next up, prosecutor Stacey Diener said multiple people were in each confession category, including nurses and doctors. So Rosie had broken down Rick's confessions into 5 different categories, which, I mean, if you have to break down confessions into categories and there's 5, that's not good for Rick. A letter Rick wrote to the prison chaplain can't be found, which I don't understand how people are losing all this evidence. Rick confessed to his family, but they are not state actors, because the defense is saying that the guards and stuff coerced Rick, but they work for the state. But obviously we've heard that Rick confessed to his wife and mom on the phone, but they do not work for the prison or the state of Indiana. Rick said, I killed them, but later said he was innocent. Continuing with the motion to suppress, the former Westville warden Gallipo, he discussed Rick's cell conditions at Westville, where the lights are always on, but Rick could dim them in his cell. His door had a 5 by 10 inch hole. There was a guard or suicide companion at Rick's cell all the time. Rick was put on suicide watch on April 1st, 2023, so his privileges were taken away. I'm not sure why they reference this date, because in the April 11th, 2024 memorandum of law in support of defendant Allen's motion to suppress, the defense stated Rick was placed on suicide watch upon his initial detention in November of 2022, despite the fact that there were no underlying findings to suggest he was suicidal. Rick made 3 to 5 incriminating statements through his cell door slit, such as, quote, I killed those girls, end quote, which I was not surprised to hear that Rick supposedly said, I killed those girls, because in the Franks memo, volume 1, the defense created that fake quote on page 22 that stated, quote, he would not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorney, such as, quote, the guards are telling me that my wife and family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her I killed those girls, end quote. So it seems like Baldwin and Rosie knew Rick said, I killed those girls, and they were just trying to falsely blame the guards for making him say it, which is shady to me. Continuing with Gallipo, the temporary suicide companions were not supposed to communicate with Rick. They were just supposed to sit outside his cell and only write down his odd behavior and give it to Dr. Walla's team. One inmate told his girlfriend what Rick told him, but the subject was not revealed in testimony, and the companions were replaced by guards on April 23rd, 2023. Rick wrote to Warden Gallipo that he wanted to meet him to confess, but Gallipo sent the letter to Internal Affairs and never actually had a formal meeting with Rick. Gallipo walked past Rick's cell every day to look at his physical condition, but not talk. One time, Rick approached the door and confessed to Gallipo, but gave no specific details of the crime. Rick told Gallipo he was treated well at Westville, but I think someone else said during these hearings that Dr. Walla said Rick thought he was being treated bad. Rick was offered a TV at some point, but did not want it, which I'm not sure if that's a true statement or not. Why would he not want a TV? Another person, I believe her name is pronounced Keneva Maps. She is the Westville Internal Affairs and Correctional Police Officer. She testified that Gallipo gave her team the letter that Rick wrote to him, and it was put in the evidence room. Next up, Rosie questioned Holman. He said that Rick told guards he was innocent and also guilty. Rick said he used a box cutter to murder Abby and Libby and threw it in the dumpster at CVS. So he said he got this box cutter through his job at CVS Pharmacy. And on the right here, you can see there is a dumpster. Continuing with the motion to suppress, Rosie questioned Dr. Walla, who is the psychologist at Westville. She met with Rick daily when he arrived at Westville and was on suicide watch. They talked from his cell door mostly, but sometimes in other areas of the prison. Rick did not have a desk and slept and ate on his floor and said there were rats in his cell, which that's nasty. Rick has taken mental health medication since he was 25 and was on Prozac at the time of his arrest. He had major depressive disorder, dependent personality disorder that causes anxiety when separated from family, and general anxiety disorder. Rick was hospitalized for depression in 2019, but the month was not revealed. It is unknown if it was before or after the April 2019 Delphi press conference. Obviously, if it turns out that it was like May of 2019, that's going to look pretty guilty that he had a breakdown soon after there's a big update on the case. Rosie questioned Dr. Walla even further. She said Rick's mental health deteriorated in March 2023 when he said he didn't feel right. By April 1st and 2nd, he was suicidal, delusional, and not eating or sleeping. He ran into a cell wall on purpose, which caused a head injury, so he was involuntarily given the medication Haldol, which is an antipsychotic drug. I looked up the side effects of that drug, and there was nothing really saying any kind of mental side effect that would cause him to confess to these murders. When Rick arrived at Westville, he was not very religious, but on March 21st, 2023, Rick found God and started to confess, even before he saw discovery evidence. When Dr. Walla first met Rick, he said he was innocent, but on May 3rd, 2023, Rick told her he wanted to call his wife to confess and wanted Dr. Walla to hear it, but his wife did not answer. Rick said his wife doesn't believe him, and he wanted to confess to get right with God. He was remorseful of his actions and wanted to give his Bible to Abby and Libby's families. Rick's family didn't believe him and told him, quote, "They're messing with you. They're messing with your mind," end quote. Rick told his family he felt like he was being mentally tortured. Rick was not informed that his murder confessions to mental health professionals are not private. Rick said he thought everyone hated him, but Dr. Walla said he had supporters on social media to try and make him feel better. Dr. Walla continued her long testimony by saying, Rick's mental health was still bad, and he was receiving Haldol weekly until his depression was at its worst in June 2023, before returning to some normalcy in July 2023. Due to his mental state, he was one level away from being transferred to a mental health facility. Dr. Walla thought Rick was faking memory loss and some symptoms, and he said he wanted to go to the Logansport State Hospital for inmates with mental illness so his family could be closer and see him. So it's unclear if he somehow found out that he could be transferred to this mental health facility closer to his family, and so he started acting odd to try and get transferred. Dr. Walla followed the Delphi case online before Rick was arrested and became her client. She visited Delphi's Monon High Bridge and accessed Kegan Klein's private files in the prison system, even though she should not have accessed those files. In April 2023, Rick said he wanted to kill his family, friends, and himself, but was too much of a coward and doesn't want to die. Inmates normally don't spend more than 30 days in solitary confinement, but Rick was part of the safekeeping order and had mental issues. Next up are things revealed during testimony by Detective Harshman. He listened to over 150 hours of Rick's phone calls. He still has a few more months of Rick's prison cell surveillance video to examine. Rick's cell was under video surveillance for 24 hours a day. He never heard or saw confirmation that Rick said he shot Abby or Libby or about any kind of sexual assault or molesting. It may be possible those were claims written by inmate companions talking to Rick. Over 2 months, Rick made 61 confessions with details and motive, plus another 40 other confessions without details via phone, text, and video. Rick does not want his family to see what he did and be revealed at trial. So I don't know why he's not changing his plea yet. At one point, apparently, Rick said he was disappointed with his attorneys. He confessed once at Wabash prison in February 2024 to a guard saying he was sorry he killed Abby, but no reference to Libby. In November 2022, when he was first put into prison, Rick told his wife over the phone, quote, "If this gets too much for you, just let me know, and I'll talk to the detectives and tell them everything they want to know," end quote. So what's up with that? So at the end of this, Rick apparently cried during certain testimony, threw his hands up in the air, and covered his face when they talked about what he did with his own feces. Next up on August 1st was the motion in limine. McClelland wants to prevent the jury from hearing about the following things: about McClelland, various witnesses, third-party perpetrators, including Odinism and cult or ritualistic killing, Odinist, Kegan Kline and his dad, or Ron Logan, Todd Click, geofencing that is not relevant, prior bad acts of witnesses, how the files handed over to the defense were labeled, and PowerPoint executive briefs. The defense feels if they can show a third party committed the murders, it's less likely that Rick committed the murders. But McClelland said he can debunk most of what the defense stated. Liggett and Lesenby thought 2 people were involved because of the terrain and short amount of time the murders happened. No time of death is listed on the autopsies. Law enforcement was looking for suspects with an interest in sticks and runes, and the FBI initially focused on pagan rituals, but the Behavioral Analysis Unit determined it was not a ritual killing. The defense questioned Dr. Dawn Perlmutter, who is an expert on ritualistic homicides and teaches the FBI. She's familiar with Odinism, but not an expert. It seems like the defense found her after Baldwin called a heathen expert in April of this year, but she was not interested in helping them because she disagreed with their conclusions. I'm just wondering what happened to the Purdue professor Turco, who the defense said agreed with them. It wasn't hard for the defense to find Dr. Perlmutter because she appeared on Court TV in September 2023, the day after the defense released the first Frank's memo and revealed their Odinist ritualistic sacrifice theory. She said at that time she thought it was a classic ritualistic killing only based on reading descriptions from the Frank's memo. During the recent hearing, she referenced the concept of magical thinking, which is when you get into the mind of someone who leaves symbols at a scene. She concluded the murders of Abby and Libby were a textbook ritual murder with all the indicators. So then a few days ago on August 15th, the defense submitted a filing referencing Dr. Perlmutter's testimony that I will talk about more a little bit later in this video. Continuing with the motion in limine, McClelland asked Dr. Perlmutter, how is she an expert on Odinistic murders if there haven't been any Odinistic murders? I'm not sure exactly what she said. The autopsy said the girl's wounds were from a serrated blade. McClelland indicated Rick may have said he killed them before he got to complete his sexual fantasy. Staging was an undoing because he felt remorse. It was not some kind of ritual or some kind of rune. The defense asked Holman about sketches 1 and 2 looking different, and he said he thinks they were the same man, Rick. It was mentioned that neither witness 4 or the 3:57 p.m. driver on 300 North wanted to do a sketch, but police pressured them to do the first and second sketches. Next up, BH's ex-wife testified and said BH told her he never met Abby, which he later changed his stance on that. The fight with PW was because PW wanted to move beyond animal sacrifices to human sacrifices. BH was drunk when saying most of these things, including when he said PW killed Abby and Libby and that his wife should be quiet or PW would kill her. BH's family were Christian, but his wife got him interested in Nordic gods. BH told her that Abby's mom was living with a black man. They were only married a few months in 2018 and did not even know each other in 2017, which I don't understand how that works, because if he said that his wife got him interested in Nordic gods, but he was posting on Facebook these Nordic runes in at least 2016. His ex-wife said people in her religion do not kill white children in rituals. BH said the mimic crime scene picture were his friends reenacting a sacrifice. BH's boss signed an affidavit stating she saw him at work the day of the murders. Next up, the defense questioned Kevin Murphy, who works for Indiana State Police. Police had EF's sister call him about the murders, but he didn't admit to anything on the phone. The alibi that EF was at a hospital visiting a friend with two men was a lie, although I think he said that in 2018, so I don't know how they expect these guys to remember where they were on that specific day. EF's sister said the morning of February 14th, 2017, Elvis tried to give her a blue coat with blood on it and said he was part of a gang now, which obviously that's kind of weird, or more than kind of. Murphy thought EF was messing with him and possibly lying. EF's sister had a lot of pills in her home that may have indicated a mental issue where she was also not telling the truth, although one of his sisters did pass a lie detector test. Murphy never had evidence to place any of the Odinists at the crime scene, which to me is like one of the biggest facts in this case, at least trying to prove that Odinists killed Abby and Libby and not Rick. Next up, the defense questioned Todd Click, who worked at the Rushville Police Department and investigated these Odinists. He thought Abby and Libby encountered men doing a ritual in the woods and made fun of them, so they were killed out of anger by the Odinists, which I was so surprised to hear that that was his theory. But he may not have had access to all the facts, like that witness 4 saw one man on platform 1 a few minutes before Abby and Libby reached the high bridge, and that 4 girls between 12:30 and 1:30 only saw one man entering the trails. We know that Abby and Libby took photos on the high bridge, so where and when did Abby and Libby see this group ritual at 2 p.m. on a Monday afternoon? His theory, no offense, but it just makes no sense to me, and I'm really surprised that he thinks it does. That sounds mean, but sorry. Click said there was no proof Odinists were at the crime scene, so why does he still think they're involved? I mean, I agree that there are definitely a lot of suspicious things about the Odinists, but there's not enough to prove that they were there. Next up, the defense questioned Dave Vito, who works for Indiana State Police. Police thought Tony Klein may have used Kegan's social media, but could not prove it. Kegan had a Smith & Wesson .40 caliber gun, but police never found it. That's important because the round found next to the bodies was from a .40 caliber gun. The Unified Command thought the motive was sexual with 2 minor females. Kegan and his dad were at home in Peru using their phones on the day of the murders. Not at the grandparents, not at the cousins, not anywhere else, but they were home the day of the murders. During the August 2022 Grissom Air Force Base interview with police and Kegan, he said he was at the Delphi cemetery with his dad in the red Jeep on the day of the murders. His dad, Tony, went into the woods while Kegan waited in the car. Tony returned 1 to 2 hours later with blood on his pants and didn't say what he did, but, quote, "we had a good time," end quote. So police took Kegan in a car after he said this and had him show the route that he and his father took, but their car was not on any surveillance video, which to me, first of all, Kegan had only said previously that he went to Delphi once for a high school football game, so how would he even know where the Delphi cemetery was? And if he did that in 2022, how did police look at video surveillance from 5 years prior on that same route and not see their red Jeep? I don't know. So then Kegan, I mean, I can't believe that he lied to police with all this stuff. Kegan said he threw a phone and his dad threw a knife in the Wabash River near their house on the way home from killing Abby and Libby. But nothing in the Wabash River search that took like 4 to 5 weeks was found relating to the Kleins or led to police looking into Richard Allen. And there was no connection between Kegan and Rick. Police said Kegan's story was a lie and there was no red Jeep on video or digital evidence placing Kegan or his father in Delphi on the afternoon of the murders. Police could not open contents of Kegan's messages sent to Libby, I guess on Instagram or Snapchat. Motion in limine continued the defense questioning of Haran, who's an investigator, about geofence data. There were other phones at the crime scene, including a device at the cemetery that connects to one of the Odinists. That was what the defense said, but they didn't really reveal which Odinist it belonged to. McClellan seemed to say that geofencing is unreliable, but I thought, well, if geofencing proved that Rick was at the crime scene at 2:30, then wouldn't McClellan say that geofencing is reliable? So why is he saying it's unreliable if it's not? Why would police order a geofence report if it's not even reliable? So we're gonna have to wait and find out what they say at the trial. Next up, the prosecution questioned Cecil, who also works for Indiana State Police. Libby's phone was extracted in 2019 and 2024 after there was an update to the software for Celebrate, which is the software for extracting data from phones. The Bridge Guy video was from 2:13 p.m. and 51 seconds until 2:14 and 34 seconds and geolocated close to the Delphi High School at the start of the video, but then it went to the Mona High Bridge. I don't think there's anything shady going on with that. Her Snapchat geolocated to the bridge that day and time, so it seems like there's not any shenanigans with these videos and photos. There was only one phone. Abby did not have a phone. I know there's some rumors that Abby may have had a phone at the crime scene, but apparently he said no. Libby's phone had Apple Health, which tracked their steps for 18 minutes after the Bridge Guy video, and 2:32 p.m. and 39 seconds was the last movement until their bodies were found. So I wonder if this is the time when it was placed under Abby's body. Also, does the Apple Health tracking of steps reveal they did cross the creek? I'm not sure if it just shows the number of steps or the actual GPS location. It might just be the step count and time. Libby's phone was still on at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th when she received 14 to 15 texts, and the battery was not depleted. She was connected to a cell tower, not Wi-Fi. The photo of Abby on the bridge was not on Libby's phone, but the photo of the entire bridge was. So it might be that Libby took a photo of the bridge and then uploaded it to Snapchat, and the photo of Abby on the bridge was taken in the Snapchat app and not on Libby's phone. So it did not save to her phone. I don't think, again, there's anything that's a conspiracy there. Next up, the defense questioned Purdy, who also works for Indiana State Police or some kind of Indiana Police Department. He said there was no proof the mimicked crime scene photo was on BH's Facebook, but Baldwin said Purdy's deposition confirmed that it was. So I'm not sure that it even has any relevance to the case. So that's that. The defense questioned Cicero, who is a blood spatter expert. The defense previously said the F tree was Libby's blood painted on by the killer, but Cicero did tests and determined it was probably Libby's left handprint with her pinky up as she touched the tree after she tried to stop bleeding from her neck. The shape is more like an upside down L, about 3 by 3 inches, and not the shape of an F. Another blood spot nearby on the tree was possibly her thumbprint. Libby moved around after she was injured with 3 cuts, but Abby was likely on the ground already when she was attacked with 1 cut. Abby was clothed when she died. At one point, she was possibly partially nude. So that was it for the hearings. And then the next thing that happened was on August 12th, Gull denied the 3rd and 4th Frank's memos. So the defense tried it. She denied it. The basis of that was to try and get everything thrown out from the search of his house, and that's not happening. August 13th, the defendant's supplemental submission regarding state's motion in limine was 3 pages by the defense. I wrote that the defense filed this 12 days after the motion in limine hearing. Why didn't they present it at the August 1st hearing? What if Gull had ruled before August 13th when they filed this and not considered these arguments? It might be possible that she told them to file it and she will rule after, because she has not ruled on the motion in limine yet. So the defense requested Gull take notice of the November 22nd, 2022 hearing when the state requested to maintain confidentiality of the probable cause affidavit to arrest Rick. On April 29th, 2024, the state's motion in limine sought to limit various forms of evidence and third-party culpability, like Odinism, cult or ritualistic killing, the 6 Odinists, Kagan Klein and his dad, and Ron Logan. This motion restricts Rick's Sixth Amendment right to present his defense by way of limiting investigative records by Todd Click and geofencing records generated by law enforcement investigators. McClellan said it was an ongoing investigation in November 2022, and quote, "We have good reason to believe that Richard Allen is not the only person involved in this case, that there may be other actors involved. That's why we left the tip line open. That's why we left the tip email open. The question becomes, at least in the state's mind, is it more important to release the details of the investigation to the public, or more important to keep those confidential in order for the investigation to continue and find anyone else that's responsible," end quote. In addition to the prosecutor's comments, Letters were sent to Gull from ISP Detective Jerry Holman and Carroll County Prosecutor's Office investigator Stephen Mullen that stated that the investigation is ongoing and fluid, at least as of November 2022. So the defense is arguing that the state's own admissions are evidence of third-party culpability. And this next slide just shows that there were one page each of a letter filed by Mullen and Holman, where they said the investigation is ongoing and releasing the PCA for Rick may jeopardize the case. Also on August 13th, Gull granted the defense's August 7th request for hearing transcripts. So next up, August 15th, Memorandum of Law in support of admission of evidence of alternative theories of the crime. This was 27 pages filed by the defense. My summary was, Rick has a constitutional right under the 6th and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution and the Indiana Constitution to present evidence attacking the credibility of the prosecution's case, undermining the believability of the prosecution's witnesses, identifying third-party suspects, and establishing the defense's theory of the case. This right is essential to a fair trial, and denial of this right constitutes structural error. The defense cited a variety of rulings in prior cases and reviewed what they presented at the recent 3 days of hearings, including witness testimony that the murders have ties to Odinism and were ritualistic. Evidence strongly suggests more than one person was responsible, according to the defense. Murphy, the Indiana State Police officer, testified it has always been the belief of law enforcement that there were between 2 to 6 people involved. There are third-party suspects who have not been charged and who have no ties to Rick. This leads to the conclusion that Rick is innocent and that other individuals killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. The defense spelled Abby's name wrong. I added the defense left out the part where Murphy said he could not place any of the Odinists at the crime scene. Continuing, the defense summarized Dr. Dawn Perlmutter's findings, including that rituals take place on important dates like February 14th, but failed to show any case where Odinists murdered white girls in a ritualistic sacrifice on February 13th at 2 p.m. on a Monday in 40-degree weather, when most of them should have been working, and some of them have time cards showing they were working. So I looked into Dr. Perlmutter a little bit, and I found an article where she said, quote, many neo-pagan religious groups attempt to recreate ancient European pre-Christian religions such as Druids, goddess worshippers, Nordic paganism, and others. She continued, since there are so many different neo-pagan groups and their philosophies do not entail violent rituals, it would go beyond the scope of this article to even briefly describe all of their philosophies, end quote. Final quote from her is, the most controversial crime committed for religious purposes is human sacrifice. Currently, Palo Mayombe practitioners, Satanists, vampires, and serial killers have been linked to ritual murders. So this article was from 20 years ago. So she may have changed her opinion or have more references to Odinist ritualistic killings of 8th grade white girls, but she did not present it during her recent testimony. So I'm not really following her conclusions. So now back to this recent filing. The defense referenced FBI agent Nicole Robertson testifying that when she searched Ron Logan's house soon after the murders, she was looking for evidence of runes and anything Nordic due to the placement of sticks on the girls' bodies. Regarding Libby's phone connecting to the tower at 4:33 a.m., the defense stated, quote, it is logical to believe that whatever caused the phone to connect was the result of actions taken by third-party suspects, end quote. Well, I added, where's the evidence an Odinist did something to her phone at 4:33 a.m.? So we'll have to wait for the trial to hear more specifics about her phone and what happened. So the defense had a variety of sections in this filing for the Odinist BH, PW, EF, JM, the Kleins, and Ron Logan, with their reasons why the defense believed these guys were involved in the murders and not Rick. So I came up with this list of theories referenced by the defense about the killings. They said PW and his crew killed the girls because Abby's mom was a race traitor. They said Kagan said he drove with his father to the cemetery and killed the girls and then threw a knife and gun in the Wabash River. They said Ron Logan matched Bridge Guy's body and voice. They said BH said that PW wanted to go from animal to human sacrifices. I added, so were they doing a ritual at 2 p.m. hoping someone would come by, but they didn't think witness 4 was a good victim, so they waited 2 to 3 minutes for Abby and Libby? But the 4 girls between 12:30 and 1:30 and witness 4 never saw this group of Odinist men doing a ritual. The defense also wants to say that Todd Click thought Abby and Libby randomly walked up upon a group ritual, and were killed because they made fun of it. It's like, pick one and go with it. Because if I'm on the jury, like, you can't just give me all these different supposed theories and not explain where your client was. I wrote here, didn't PW and BH have their fight before the murders happened? Continuing, Dr. Perlmutter testified that individuals adhering to the white nationalist version of Odinism would kill others because of the belief that someone was a race traitor. I want to know, where's the evidence of prior Odinist killing any race traitors or 8th grade girls because her mom was dating a non-white person? I mean, she's just not going to convince the jury without more evidence. EF said BH mimicked his Facebook posts when he posted pictures of knives, brass knuckles, and sticks in the woods. But Murphy testified that EF's Facebook post mimicked those of BH. There's a researcher named Thomas Eidson who researched both of their Facebooks, and it is obvious to me that there was no mimicking either way, just similar objects, and sometimes they were posted a few years apart. So this defense theory doesn't hold up for me. These two Odinists from Rushville with the initials NS and EF drove a white pickup truck. So this is something new that came out, these two things here. It said, this other thing, I've never heard this, at 4:20 p.m. on the day of the murders, a female driver with the initials TG saw a white truck parked at CPS. I added, well, depending where the 357 driver saw a bridge guy on 300 North, he was likely gone by 4:20 from CPS. So does the Hoosier Harbor Store camera show a white truck headed towards CPS, and at what time? Does it show it leaving? EF would have had to leave by 5:30 to get home to use his cell phone again at 7:30 p.m. Did the truck, if on video, match NS or EF's truck? Reminder that they live 2 hours away from Delphi. So to be exculpatory, evidence must clear or tend to clear Rick of alleged fault or guilt. I added, how do these Odinist, KK, and Ron Logan accusations answer the questions that point to Rick not being on the trail between noon to 1:30? Is that Rick's car headed to CPS at 1:27 on the Hoosier Harbor Store camera? Why did Rick's gun match the unspent round? Why is Rick confessing dozens of times? The defense questioned the alibis of third-party perpetrators, but have never given a solid alibi for Rick. The defense said the prosecution has not identified any motive as to why Rick would kill Abby and Libby. There's absolutely no evidence as to Rick's motive to commit the crime. But why has the prosecution alluded to Rick revealing the motive in his confessions? In September 2023, this is my part that I added to this here while I was reading this recent filing from August 15th. In September 2023, the defense stated in the Franks memo, volume 1, page 30, quote, the F on the tree resembles a rune called Onsus, which stands for Odin. Again, when paired with the Hoggle rune found on Abby, the combination would proclaim Hail Odin. This F symbol was the same F symbol found in many of BH's Facebook pages, including BH's creepy self-drawn illustration in which a red F rune was found at the base of a tree where a man appeared to be sacrificed on a tree, end quote. So at the recent hearings, the blood spatter expert said it was more like an upside down L on the tree instead of an F. So in this filing on August 15th, the defense stated, quote, there is what can be interpreted as a Laguz rune painted or transferred to a tree with Liberty German's blood, end quote. So I looked up, and Laguz is the rune of water, intuition, evolution, and unconscious. So the killer's message was Hail Water, not Hail Odin. Like, this totally blows apart this prior theory by the defense. And this is what the Laguz looks like. And that's not even an F. So again, the defense with this Odinist stuff is just not adding up to me. The final slide here is all the errors that the defense made in this filing. At the bottom here, I said, Calgon, take me away, with all these errors. All right, just a few more, and then I'm going to get to your comments. Then, August 15th, Judge Gull ruled on two of the hearing issues. The motion to compel and motion for sanctions, she denied. She said the state has to turn over Sergeant Cecil's report within 10 days to the defense, and any new discovery must be provided within 7 days of receipt over to the defense. She said the parties have to exchange a list of trial exhibits by October 1st. Also on the 15th of August, Gull denied the second motion to dismiss by the defense. She said there's no evidence the state destroyed exculpatory evidence nor acted in bad faith. The defense argues this allegedly exculpatory evidence all relates to the Odinist BH. However, no evidence has been presented to support this argument, nor has any evidence been presented to negate the evidence offered by the state, which cleared BH of involvement in these crimes. That was Gull writing that. So it seems like she did not feel like she saw any evidence to prove that BH was involved. So I'm assuming that for the third party motion in limine, she's going to deny at least that part of it. So the next big update in the case is this Friday, August 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern. There's going to be a status hearing. The first part is private, which is unknown what it's about. The second part is public, but we also don't know what that's about. So depending on what is revealed, I may do live chats again next weekend. Thanks for watching. Whoops, my mic was muted. So that was the updates from the past month. Now I'll get to some of your comments. Just waiting for one other thing here. Sorry, please stand by. Hi, Anne. Some of the digital evidence, none of which we've heard about from the state thus far, in my opinion, so much more of that to come at trial. Yes, I think we have to remind ourselves that we have not heard everything. So we'll see what happens next. I know a lot of people think there might be a plea deal, but what is Rick waiting for? If he truly is guilty, what is he waiting for to change his plea officially? So, can I get some thumbs up from two people that you're ready? The other, all right, one person said a thumbs up. Second person, you ready? All right, here we go. Hi, guys.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Hannah.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
All good.
So since I was not able to attend the hearings, I wanted to ask two people who did attend the hearings to join so you guys can get some firsthand comments from them. So I have Aspen Connor, who's been on the channel It's a Crime and Shame, and he also has his own YouTube channel under Aspen Connor. And Hannah Shakespeare, obviously we know from, she made a documentary, sorry, not a document. She made a full documentary that a lot of people were very impressed with. So yes.
It went nowhere, but thank you.
Right. Well, no, everybody who saw it was obviously very impressed with you and your grilling of Tobe Lesenby. Well, all right. So before we start, you guys in the comments, you can ask what you want to know about people who are actually there personally. So Aspen, what would you say was some of your big takeaways from these 3 days of hearings?
Well, I mean, as you know, Tom, we both went in May, and Hannah. But so there was that anticipation level already built up in May, only to then have it kind of be pushed off until the end of July. But my first takeaway was really just the surrealness of, and Hannah's already had this experience, but really just encountering a lot of these actors or people that that we focused on, we've heard about so much for so many years, and then to have them all in one room, it was a very surreal experience, just personally. Of course, none of it involves any of us, but just to be there and to witness their actual behavior and their mannerisms and the way they talk and act, it was enlightening.
What would you say were the most shocking revelations that you heard that we had not heard previously?
Well, most of them were not in the courtroom, and they were told to me by Hannah, so I can't say them now. No, I would say like many people. I mean, some of the testimony that we had not previously heard details of course, was shocking. But when you cover a case as closely as all of us do, the smallest thing, like you had referenced earlier, Tom, about like just the initials of the drivers that you'd not heard of before, that can seem like a big deal in your head because it's just a piece of information you hadn't previously known.
Yeah.
But no, the box cutter was, was something that stood out immediately.
And somebody just asked, can the guest confirm who said the autopsy said a
That was
serrated?
Holman. Holman
Holman.
dropped that bomb.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, but Holman said, yeah, apparently Rick said maybe on a phone call that he used a CVS issued box cutter. And I
Yeah.
guess Holman said the autopsy determined it was a serrated blade that caused the injuries.
Yeah.
The actual word serrated did not come into play until I think it was day 3. And that was made in reference to another witness. And that's when they weren't sure whether it was the BAU report that it was stated in as serrated weapon or not. But they did reference the autopsy report as saying box cutter, I believe, or the BAU report. There was a little bit of confusion with that about what stated where.
And before I get to Hannah, Aspen, on the days you sat right behind Richard Allen, what was that like? How did he react to the day 3 photos, I guess, of the crime scene?
Well, the audience or the gallery was not shown the photos. Of course, his attorneys on both sides of him, they had the photos, but I could not. I didn't see him trying to look at them or try to or react to them. He definitely reacted to some of the testimony, as I think someone naturally would, but I didn't see any attempt by him to see the pictures.
So Hannah, what would you say were your takeaways from the 3 days of hearings and your visit to Delphi?
Well, I mean, I look at it from a totally different perspective in the context of, I just am trying to piece together whether the narratives that both sides are saying kind of make sense to me logically. And, obviously when Holman said box cutters, that was a big deal. I had never heard the term magical thinking. That was interesting to me. Seeing Rick was tough. I think the biggest takeaway that I would say, just like from an objective point of view, is that the prosecution seemed to be very prepared, and I didn't think the same of the defense. I thought they were scrambling a bit, so I don't know whether that's going to clean up by trial or not. But the other thing I thought there were certain testimonies, particularly from Cicero, having been on the crime scene, that I just wasn't making sense of. And so that there are things that stuck out to me of these are expert witnesses. He's obviously very credentialed, but just some of that stuff logically didn't make sense to me, but I'm not an expert on any of it. And also, one of the things that really struck me was Carrie Timmons hugged Kathy Allen. And she told me that, so I never knew this, because every time I had interviewed Carrie, it was in the winter. I mean, I saw her at the October 18th hearings. I saw her after that, and she was in long sleeves and stuff. But I interviewed her after this recent hearing, and she showed me that she has a sleeve on her, like a tattoo sleeve on her left arm that's devoted to Libby, and she walked me through it. And she said whenever she feels like Libby is speaking to her, that she gets these tinglings up the left arm. And she went over and felt the need to hug Kathy Allen, which was surprising to me.
Wow. And that's a sentiment. I've heard from many members of the victims' families that that they don't blame the families of the accused, and that they just want answers and justice the same way everyone else does. So I've not personally even heard any of the family members condemn or say with their absolute opinion of who's guilty. I think everyone realizes that there are a lot of broken lives in this whole situation, and that at this point nothing's going to fix any of that, and so there's no reason to lash out and hate anyone else. That was my take on things I've experienced with them.
Yes, so for anyone just joining, Aspen and Hannah were at the hearing, so enter any comments you want based on people who are actually at the hearing. So SP74, hi. She asked, was it your understanding that the FBI BAU, Behavioral Analysis Unit report, was from the U.S. Marshals as opposed to the FBI?
So I did not pick up on this when I was listening to it in the court. Someone asked me about it, I went back to my notes, and I specifically had written U.S. Marshals BAU report. I didn't realize the U.S. Marshals even had a behavioral analyst unit, so I did do some research, and they do. They assist a lot of different agencies, and I think they work very closely hand in hand. So as to who created the report, it's credited with U.S. Marshals, but was that with the FBI's help? I don't know, but it was stated in court that the U.S. Marshals did the BAU report that they were referencing.
Well, previously it was mentioned that the FBI BAU did a
I
report.
know that's so.
Yeah, it's confusing.
It was. So are there two report, or were there two separate reports, or or were they part of like a task force where they kind of both could take credit for that BAU report? I'm not sure the answer to that. I'm not qualified.
I'm not either. I can ask Grasso.
You want to reference who Grasso is?
Well, Grasso was U.S. Marshal.
So he was that guy who's in your documentary with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, he's not going to answer me now, but I'm just curious. I am curious about how big the BAU unit is for the U.S. Marshals. I just don't know.
Right. Yeah. When I actually went to their .gov site, I mean, it seems like, and I guess it makes sense that a lot of agencies have overlapping and similar types of departments and units. So I'm not sure how big they are either, and how hand in hand they all might work together. The U.S. Marshals and FBI BAU units may work very hand in hand.
High necessary evil. So they said, that's what I keep saying. If you can't prove they were ever there, what's the point? So according to Judge Gull, she did not seem to be convinced that there's enough evidence against at least the onus BH. So it's going to be interesting to see what she says, I guess, about this motion in limine about all the other odinous also. So do you guys think if she says I'm not allowing the third party perpetrators and I am allowing all of Rick's confessions, do you think Rick's defense team may have a discussion with him at that point to say, okay, this isn't looking good for you at the trial?
Not a farce prayer. Not going to happen.
Well, can you repeat that?
No, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to, I mean, I think she is going to deny. My sense is she's going to deny based on everything where she's leaning per your presentation. I hope not, but they may, it may stop everything again. And then we got to go to the Supreme Court about that. I mean, I spoke to a big defense attorney a couple of days ago in Indiana, and she was saying that it'll be a problem in the context that you have. I mean, they extracted Patrick Westfall's phone as late as September of 2023, where they met with Brad again. That's when Purdy and Vito didn't extract Bad's phone, but they did do extraction on Patrick PW. I'm not sure what I could say or not say. So there's just, you've got the head of the FBI saying that they're looking for wounds. You've got they're extracting phones all the way up to August 23rd. One of the other things that came out that I was super interested in was there was, a trucker named Chrisman, and I don't know how to spell that, who is out of Rushville, and he was doing a livestock run between Rushville and Michigan. And he would go to Packers and drop stuff off. And apparently Elvis Fields would ride along with them on occasion and get paid $20 to help unload the livestock. And on the 13th, Chrisman was in Delphi. And Todd Click confirmed to me that he felt that Elvis Fields was with him on that run. Chrisman spent the night in Delphi allegedly with his girlfriend. So, but that's not proof. There's no proof that he was there. There's no proof that he's on this crime scene. It was just Click's opinion based on his research. I know Click was upset, didn't feel that Andy had crossed him in a way that would allow him to get more evidence out. I spoke to him outside on that day, and he was bothered by it. But so when you ask the questions like, is there any direct evidence? There's no direct evidence. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So it's obviously Click's opinion that Elvis Fields was there, but nobody's verified it.
Right.
Just to clarify, you said Packers. That's the Indiana Packers.
Yeah. So Rushville. So this trucker who is affiliated with Odinist. Apparently they're not Odinist. You call them people who follow whatever. he was running security for the Patriot Guard or the American Guard, where there was an intercross with Patrick Westfall in Indianapolis at one point. Apparently, Johnny Messer was hooked up with this driver as well, and Johnny Messer was kind of the recruiter for the Odinists. And so this trucker would do frequent runs between Rushville and Delphi Packers. On that particular day, he was meant to go to Michigan, that particular day, meaning February 13th. Mm-hmm. But he did spend the night in Delphi and then went on to Michigan the next day. So.
And can I just add to that was a frustration of mine as well when we were in the courtroom, because, regardless of whether or not you feel like there's weight to any of these third party suspects, I felt like part of the point of why we were there those days was because Rich Allen's defense team clearly believes there's enough weight that these should be admitted into court. And I felt like it was, I had the same frustration that Click did. I felt like that, there was, I felt like they were given the opportunity to lay out the evidence that they felt were strong indicators that these people may have something to do with this case. But then they were allowed to just have their entire testimony basically kind of negated with a few questions by the prosecution. Yeah. And then there was no follow-up, and I wished at that point that, when Nick McClelland said, is there any connection to these people and Delphi on that day? Is there any, or is there any evidence that proves that they, were connected to the crime scene? And they all had to say no. And then I didn't see either of the defense attorneys, try to at least say, do you think that's because, Unified Command didn't allow you to further investigate that? Or, I felt like there were avenues there they could have gone down that could have strengthened their argument about why they needed to have the third party defense, and they just didn't take it.
I agree. I thought they were really weak on all that, that's their primary case. I just thought that they were not asking the hard-hitting questions. And obviously everybody here in this group and on this call knows the case inside and out. I mean, pretty well, as best we can. And I was like, where's the clear delineation of these are my primary, I'm going to hit this hard. It was very difficult to follow. I mean, the whole time I was thinking, why aren't they asking this? Why aren't they asking that? And they just didn't. And like I said, Click was pissed outside the courtroom. I mean, that's why I approached him, because I heard him say he was pissed. So I was like, what are you pissed about? And obviously he's under a gag order, so he couldn't tell me much, but that's why I said I thought they were underprepared. I don't know if it was underprepared. I just didn't understand it. I was confused as well. And we know the case.
Well, wasn't that at the end of day 3 where that?
Yeah, it wasn't end of day 3, but it was day 3.
Yeah, it was. I guess from someone I was speaking to that was at the was it the June 15th or was it the contempt hearing that he testified at before? Either way, Click has testified at a hearing before, and they had attended that hearing, and they said that his testimony was very different that day, and not meaning what he was saying, but just meaning that he was on the stand for a very long time the first time he testified, and he was able to get more out. And then this time he was really on that stand that third day for 20 minutes, and and he was asked questions that he had to answer, that he answered honestly, and it really didn't strengthen his argument as to why he thinks these guys were involved. And then he didn't really get any assistance from the counsel that was there to help him, or to get the third party stuff in. So I thought that was interesting.
I mean, I could see how Click thought there was a lot of stuff that was suspicious about these Odinists, but I was just really shocked that his theory was that these Odinists were in the woods and Abby and Libby made fun of them, when to me, the facts that we know about one man being seen and Abby and Libby taking photos on the bridge by themselves, it's like, where did this all go down based on Click's theory? I just don't understand it, to be honest.
Right. I mean, this was the opportunity for them to really have the Brad and Andy big tent show, and it was just like, and I just didn't see it happen. But
Yeah, me neither. I thought that allowing him to say that, I thought hurt them. You know, I mean, it set him up in a way that I don't think you want to get into that physically. You can't really support the argument. Where the hell were they?
And to just know, and to just not argue, and just not offer any,
Follow up.
and saying follow up.
Next question from Anne. Do we know? Oh, sorry. How much more do we know, or don't we now know about the Bridge Guy video after this hearing? Was it involved at all in these hearings? So one thing that was new was that Libby's phone had Apple Health on it, which counted their steps for 18 minutes after, I guess, this VG video. Was anything about that actual 43-second video other than the exact timestamps revealed? No, nothing more really.
I will say that when we came in on morning one, and I saw the giant TV screen in the front of the court, the first thing I thought was,
Me too. I was like, oh my God, we're going to see it.
We're going to see the video.
But no, what did they use that for? Only for one of BH's deposition?
We got to see 60 seconds of one of Brad Holder's interrogation or interviews.
That was the only thing that was shown on that TV.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I didn't see it. There was nothing else presented. It was still up there the second day. We all thought, oh, we're going to see something more, and then they didn't.
Yeah. Just like the poster boards.
Big fish, small pond. Did the blood expert using his own blood for testing and not filming the test lose him any credibility to his credibility?
I don't think so.
That was Cicero, correct?
Cicero. Yeah, Cicero. I didn't think so. I mean, Cicero's really credentialed.
Yeah.
I didn't think that. I know that seems weird. It seems vampirish or something, but it's not. I mean, it's, that didn't strike me as he didn't lose any credibility. Filming it, maybe he did film it, but it just wasn't there in the hearings. What do you think, Aspen?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note that, you looked at it from a very logical standpoint. He's credentialed, so I mean, there should be a level of trust and respect given to him by that already. I also think that there was very few people in that courtroom that could have compartmentalized the emotional feelings they were having over what he was saying to that wasn't even a thought of mine at the time, was that, he used his own blood, because I was still overwhelmed by the material that he was presenting and the emotional effect it was having on the people in the gallery, and to realize that half the people in the gallery are the family members of these victims. So that was an incredibly effective and heavy end to a very, very long day. So yeah, I don't think it made anyone have any doubts in his credentials.
Well, was it surprising for you? For the past 11 months, we've heard, according to the defense, that there was an F painted on the tree with Libby's blood, and this man said no, it's more like an L, upside down L, probably from her hand print.
Her left hand, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I just wasn't. I mean, I don't see how that. I mean, I just don't see how that works. I also didn't. A lot of his like this, and so
yeah. Could you guys show? Do you remember? Did he actually show like the shape?
The thumb down?
Right, but the thumb is the longer section. So he's saying the runoff was coming like this. And can you do a 90-degree angle from your thumb and your? I could not.
It was the heel of the. So this is the heel of the palm, right?
Right.
And so it was the left hand, the heel of the palm, and the pinky, right?
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. The other thing is that he kept referring to, like, there's no anybody. I know everybody thinks I'm a nut job because I still continue to think they didn't cross the creek, and I would arduously still argue that. The crime scene is the crime scene. The girls were killed on Ron Logan's property. So there's no doubt that that's where that's the kill site, unfortunately or fortunately, that you can't refute. But I also thought that a lot of, if you know the tree and you know the position of where the bodies was, he was using a lot of southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, but I know what he's talking about. And I thought some of that stuff just didn't. He was talking about there being blood splatter on the north side of the tree, which would just be exactly the opposite side of where the attack presumably took place. And then does that suggest that it went around the tree and splattered back on it? I mean, the other thing I thought he didn't articulate well was there was very little discussion of what actually happened to Abby and the blood flow with Abby. I mean, a head wound is a vicious bleed, right? And he was saying there was very little blood. No, I'm not saying that they were moved or exsanguinated or any of that. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It was just odd. I just couldn't figure out, I couldn't, in my mind, which is irrelevant, frankly, because nobody gives a shit, but I couldn't physically make it work.
And when see, I think that's that last part that you said. That's the point where I felt like you and I differed a little bit in the way that we interpreted what he was saying, as far as because my interpretation of course, he made it very clear that the majority of all of the blood at the scene was Libby's,
Yeah.
and that Abby's was very contained, and that I did have a note that there was a small pool at one place, but that almost all of but they said they knew that she hadn't moved because of the level of pooling and saturation under her. And so to me, I didn't retake that as her not having excessive blood loss, just that it was all contained to one spot, in very few spots. And they said that's how, that she wasn't moved, that she had been repositioned. But they clearly could tell that Libby had been.
Was it your interpretation then from Cicero that Abby was redressed after she was injured or before?
They never, there was no testimony towards that. The only thing that he said was that he could tell because of the blood flow, that she was, that when Abby passed away, she was dressed. But he could also conclusively say that at some point during the crime, she was at least partially nude. We didn't get any indication as to how he could tell that. There was mention about both victims' bras being on her, but again, we didn't hear any science behind what would tell them that. Was there blood on one of the bras, not on one of the bras, but they were both on her? Was there no blood on the bras? So we don't know those things.
Well, didn't they say most of her blood was around her neck and shoulder?
Yeah.
Yeah, saturated underneath the hoodie area of her hoodie.
Well, I know he said Abby was cut once and Libby 3 times. Were all of those in the neck area on both girls? Do you remember?
On Libby, certainly, but I didn't think he was clear about on Abby. Did you get that up?
I did not. I don't feel like it was clear. He was able to tell that, that of course she'd been repositioned by the way she was left, but there were certain things, and he talked more about Libby with this, but just little things about knowing that he turned her head because, of the inconsistency with the way the blood would have gone had it been the other way. The only mention with Abby, he did say that some of the blood on the left side of Abby's neck was not fully dry, but he equated that to the fact that it was resting against the hoodie part on the ground, and that because of the moisture and shade the hoodie would have done, that it probably kept that wet, whereas it had dried in other areas around it.
I thought he said, Aspen, that there was no indication on the bra or the hoodie or the t-shirt, and I'm not sure he mentioned the t-shirt, nothing around the bridge of so if you're pulling it over and somebody's already had a massive head injury, that it would be on the abdomen, and there was no indication of that. So it suggested that she was killed when she was dressed. At least the upper portion of her was dressed.
Right. Well, and like I said, I got the indication that they knew that she died dressed is because the blood would not have been flowing after she passed away, so there would be no saturation underneath her and in the hoodie. But I got the same feeling you did, as far as that. They said there was no blood at the bottom of her hoodie or the sleeves, which they also used as an example as to. And it's hard to even talk about, is that, that Abby never, there was no blood on her hand or her sleeve. So they knew she hadn't tried to touch her wound. Like they could surmise that, Libby had. But
Didn't they say that Abby was also killed where, like, while she was on the actual ground, or like or at least injured?
did they say anything? Did they say that?
No,
They did about
no,
Libby. They definitely did about Libby. They did. They said, well, they didn't say that, but they referenced how, what position they thought Libby was in during different points throughout the crime. But Abby, they didn't say whether they thought she was attacked laying down
I thought somebody from the hearings did say that Abby. They said Abby was on the ground when she was injured. That might be wrong, but
well, I mean, it's presumable. I mean, they may have. I mean, it would be logical that she would have been if there hadn't been any blood splatter or indication of blood somewhere else other than right where she was laying. Because if she was standing up and had been attacked, you would think there would have been at least a trail to where she fell.
all right. The Unhinged. I don't know if this was Harshman based on Rick's phone calls or something else. Did Rick say he wanted to kill his family? Wasn't there something where was it Dr. Walla where he said he wanted to kill his family, friends, and himself, but he was a coward?
no, I saw that in your thing. No, he said he wanted to kill himself, but he was too much of a coward.
Yeah, and a lot of people misinterpret. I'm sorry, Hannah.
No, that's it. That's all. That was my interpretation. That's what I heard, but
it was one of the very first questions I was asked while we were during the hearings, and I actually had it in my notes written down, and it was easy for a lot of people to confuse, but a lot of people misinterpreted what he said. The statement he made to Dr. Walla, and I'm paraphrasing that right now, but is that I've already killed my family. I've already basically destroyed my friends. I want to kill myself. I'm just too much of a coward. And so when he made that statement about killing his family and something about his friends, I took that as being him just being, hyperbolic about the fact that he's ruined the lives of everyone around him. So what's the point of him continuing to live, but that he can't because he's too much of a coward? That was how I took that, just but I think a lot of people were like, wait, he wanted to kill his family.
yeah.
And I think that's an example of when you don't have context to something, it's easy to misconstrue it.
Hannah, okay, go ahead.
Never.
Yes. Hannah, do you want to tell people who don't know you how you got into this Delphi case?
Yeah, who's my Hannah's irrelevant. No. I got into the case despite other people claiming that they were there in 2017. I was actually there in 2017, and I got into the case just by way of following true crime. And then I am a television mystery and procedural writer, and so I've dealt with a lot of PIs and things like that. So I was hired by Lifetime to go to Delphi and do this case as a sort of murder she wrote thing, where I did a bunch of interviews with the family, with law enforcement, with one of Libby's friends. And then I've just continued to follow the case, albeit behind the scenes.
Can I say one thing really quickly?
Yeah.
If you don't know Hannah Shakespeare, all you have to do is go to IMDb, and you'll immediately be starstruck. So
thank you.
An amazing. Oh, yeah. No, when I first met you, I was scared to talk to you for the first couple of times because I was so impressed by the things that you had done, and just the fact that you went and did the thing. At that point when you went in 2019, it wasn't everybody under the sun going out there with their phones, recording stuff. I mean, you went out there, you got, and the style that you did it with was so graceful and so objective and honest, but so professional. I was very, very impressed.
That's kind. Thank you, my dear.
Find out you had such a scripted background. I mean, so
I'm basically an obsessive. I got it in 2017. I haven't left the case since, and Tom will tell you that the innumerable phone conversations that I've had with Tom and Aspen, calling every day, going, "What about this? What about this?" That's all. And
I can say from personal experience, if you've ever been on the Tobe Lesenby receiving end of Hannah Shakespeare, it's not a fun place to be, and you want to get out of it as soon as possible.
I'm being well behaved, Aspen. Stop it.
Okay, yes. So Hannah is obviously very well versed in this case and continues to be very much interested in it. Root, they don't have to present their whole case yet. The prosecution is ready, I think. So what are your thoughts on both the defense and prosecution being prepared for October?
I think I think the defense is in trouble. But I also think that that's very typical. I mean, from my understanding, I'm certainly not an attorney. The state has everything that they've got the resources. They've got, even as little as just being right down the hall from the courtroom, they can set everything up beautifully. And the defense is wheeling in carts and shit's falling off. And, it's just, I do think the state is ready. I think they're definitely giving the appearance that they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely convinced that they have the goods. I just am not. I think now I know that freaks people out, but presuming that Richard Allen is the killer, which I think you'd have to be tenaciously you'd have to really just be looking at stuff from a very tunnel vision to kind of not at least consider the fact that this guy is the right guy. The burden of proof this is not an easy case, and people get so wrapped up on his guilt and his innocence, and people asking, like, do you think Andy and Rosie think that he's guilty? Who knows? And frankly I don't care. Their job is to defend their client, and they have to get over. They don't have to prove his innocence. They don't have to do it. They have to get over the burden of proof. And I think they're damn good attorneys, even though I didn't think that they were hyper prepared. 26 terabytes of information, and I don't care what the state is saying. They are still begging to get, at least the celebrate. Like, they are begging for discovery still, and they're on their heels, which, if you do talk to defense attorneys, isn't unusual. But I think everybody's supposition that, oh, it's an easy case. I don't think so. I really don't. I think people need to be very cautious in the idea. The other concern that I have personally is that if he's convicted, there's no doubt going to be a second trial, an acquittal trial. And this issue of solitary confinement ain't going away. And they could get very burned. I think the worst case scenario is if this guy's actually guilty, and because the state proceeded in the way they proceeded, he walks, and there's no double jeopardy on this. That's going to be, and I think people need to consider that. I really do. So that's just my personal opinion on it, as hateful as it may be.
Aspen, what are your thoughts? Do you think the prosecution and defense are ready? And what are possible next steps? If third party is not allowed and the confessions are, do you think a plea deal might come before a trial?
I got the impression from all the attorneys that I felt like everyone in that room presented the image of themselves being all ready to go to trial tomorrow if given the opportunity. Like with Hannah, what Hannah said about the things that the defense claims to not have received throughout different points. I felt like the state has adequately countered that at different points, and I feel like at this point the one example of something that they don't actually have yet is that cellular bright report, and it's unclear whether they actually don't have it or whether they just haven't had time to give it to their expert to review so that they can redepo Cecil, because the wording that was used in court was interesting. They were like, we need time. It was like, it was done on May 11th, May something in 2024. But that the defense needs time to give it to their expert and to have them redeposition Cecil. I did find it interesting that they kept calling it a, was it missing document? Is that what they were calling it?
Mm-hmm.
Which I was like, well, there's a difference between like not fully prepared document and missing document, but of course there's always going to be wordplay between both sides. I thought I was very impressed, and I will say when Nick McClellan was the prosecutor in this case, of course, from the get-go, I initially knowing not much about him other than he'd never tried a murder case, he was a local Delphi guy. I had concerns about whether he whether he was going to be up to the task. And from everything I saw in court over those 3 days and everything I've seen in a lot of filings and everything, I have to say that Nick comes off very charismatic. He comes off very smart. He comes off very confident and knowledgeable, as do all the attorneys. It was just a personality takeaway of his that I felt like he was in full control in that courtroom and prepared 100%.
So there's three attorneys on each side. On the defense, there's Baldwin, Rosie, Auger. Prosecution is McClelland, Luttrell, and Diener.
Mhm.
After you guys saw each one of them present, is there one person from each side who you felt stood out that should be presenting at the trial?
Well, really quickly to go back on your last question, I do want to say about the plea deal. I feel like for a plea deal to be one offered, there has to be an advantage. And for a plea deal to be accepted or considered, there has to be an advantage. So if the state is, let's say, 1,000% confident in their case, other than saving the county money, what benefit is there for them not to take it to trial? If you're Richard Allen or you're Richard Allen's attorneys and you're 100% confident that your client is innocent, or that you have adequate, or that you think you can adequately get an appeal or what's the word, a not guilty verdict, why would you take a plea? So I don't think it's in anyone's advantage right now for a plea.
Well, as Hannah said, it's not a slam dunk case. And if I'm one of the victim's family members, I want this person, whoever's guilty,
Right.
to be held accountable. So if he says I'm accountable, I would say, yes, as a member of the family, yes, I will take whatever it takes to get the truth known. So
One thing that's going to be interesting, this again goes to this Novella Needhoff, she was an IU professor, but a criminal defense attorney in Indiana, said that in the state of Indiana, in order to even get the sort of plea negotiation happening, the defendant has to stand in front of the judge and say, I am guilty, I murdered the girls. So a lot of plea deals will happen where they'll say, look, I didn't do it, but I'm not sitting through this anymore. I'll just throw it in. That can't happen here. So I think one of the questions you have to ask is, I don't understand this. If the guy is saying 61 plus times, I did it. I mean, why didn't this get forwarded much earlier, back in April of 2023, directly in front of Gull, where he stands up and says, I'm guilty, I did it. So I don't understand why that didn't happen, other than he may not have done it, or the defense attorneys have told him, look, you've got an excellent acquittal possibility. Hang in there. We're going to get you through. I mean, it bumps on logic for me that he's saying, I did it. And somehow that didn't end up in front of the judge.
Well, and I've been hesitant because ever since I got back from the hearing, I've said that my biggest takeaway from the entire experience had to do kind of with what Hannah's talking about. And I've said it many times now, but as soon as the hearing on the 23rd was scheduled, I kind of scaled back because I was like, I don't want to be right. But I think there has to be a question in, and I'm not a lawyer, so, I have no qualification to, for anything, but I don't know if someone is making 61 direct confessions. None of them are to his attorneys, and if someone confesses to their attorney, the attorney doesn't have, I think depending on the situation it happens in and the scenario, I think they may or may not have to then present it to the court. But I think the circumstances under which, the defense was aware of his confessions and whether any of that was being turned over to the state or the court might be in question. Because remember, the state had requested how many times? 3 or 4 times for his mental health reports. And so as they knew about these confessions, I mean, I saw from my experience in those 3 days that Kathy Allen and Janice, in my opinion, have full faith in those attorneys, that they trust them and that they believe they're going to bring Rick home or get an appeal, as they should. They're there's loved ones, and I just wonder if Rick's trying to confess to 61 people. I hope that there was no one interfering and I'm not the attorneys I'm saying, but I hope there was no interference in him officially trying to change his plea.
Yeah, well, you make a good point. It's like
I just worry about
it's not like he was telling inmate companions, I did it, and not telling like the two.
Of course, he would have told them.
No, but I'm saying like the 2 women who are like his main like people in life, his wife and his mom, he supposedly confessed to them. It's not like he's hiding it from them. He's like telling all these other people. So,
but that's my point. None of it matters unless he says, "I need to go to the judge. I'm going to confess." None of it matters.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I find it bizarre if the guy's so committed 61 times to saying, "I did it, I did it, I did it." Well, why isn't he saying it to the one person who actually matters? Right. And I ask, and I love you, you know that, but I don't think Brad or Andy are so. I don't know. I think they'd be very. I think they would. First of all, would have an obligation to honor the request. So I don't. And Andy's not going to be there on Friday. So this idea that it's going to be a plea, it's just not.
No, I don't think it was a plea, and I wasn't. And I said I don't. I agree with you 100%. I think it just warrants the question. How, like you said, how does that not? How does it not go before the judge? So weird. I think there may just. I think there. I think that there could just be a need to look into why. Like, and again, I don't think that Brad and Andy are withheld, like didn't let him or something. No, but I find it, I find it totally adequate that people would ask the question so that they knew kind of what the circumstances surrounding all that was.
Well, I just got back. Grasso just wrote me back, and I don't know, so I asked him to clarify. Grasso. So he says BAU is an FBI construct. Smoke and mirrors. What the hell does that mean? If somebody can translate Grasso for me, that would be great. I wrote him back and said, what the hell does that mean? So do U.S. Marshals have a BAU unit? He was typing and then he went away. But anyway, I'll get an answer to that because he was a U.S. Marshal.
Okay.
He was a 35-year, homicide detective as well for LAPD. So he knows this shit, but he tends to make me chase it.
Just send him back. Are you having sundowners?
So obviously these.
Oh, wait, here we go. They have a small one. It's not used very often because at the end of the day, the science behind it is subjective. Just because you know the mental makeup of the sociopath doesn't let you know where they are hiding. Remember, the object is to find fugitives. So the U.S. Marshals are there to find fugitives, not to understand the psychological makeup of them. So the BA unit for the U.S. Marshals, I think what he's saying is irrelevant. No offense.
Just one final thing about these confessions is obviously everybody's like, what is he doing it because he lost his mind for a few months? But for me, I want to, if he truly, I mean, it seems like he had some major mental breakdown for a few months in April to June 2023. Like what other crazy ass things was he saying that were not true outside of confession? So like, I don't know. I just want to hear more about his overall mental state and if he was making up lies about other things not related to this actual case.
Well, I think we all do. I mean, everybody was dying to hear a portion of the, confessions. That's why 90% people are on hooks and whatever, tender hooks. I thought Walla was excellent, though. I thought Walla was really, really on point, and I was prepared because I'm like, I'm a psychologist from a prison system. She's going to be a part of it. I thought she was great. I thought, and by the way, I thought Judge Gull was excellent. I have to say that too. Yeah.
I thought Judge Gull was almost forgettable, which I think is a positive thing when it comes to an evidentiary hearing because she allowed them to kind of do their thing and she really only kind of stepped in. I thought a few times and I thought they were appropriate times.
She was very
from what we'd heard in the past, which, of course, everyone's experience is different. So the Judge Gull that you got on October 19th or 18th may have been a very different Judge Gull than we got last week or 2 weeks ago. But I thought she was very cordial and professional, and you can tell she's efficient. You can tell she runs a tight ship. And you could tell that she was not going to let those hearings go into a fourth day, which, in my opinion, is why the defense on day 2 immediately withdrew the other suppression motion.
Yeah.
I
Why
think
do you guys think they did that?
What?
Why do you think they?
I think they simply knew that there was not enough time. I think that would have been a half day to a day long hearing, and I think there was no way they were going to get it in. So I think they'll refile it if depending on the third party defense order and all of that.
So we were just talking about Judge Gull's competency, and about 10 minutes ago, I asked you guys which of the 3 attorneys on each side do you think would be the best to present at the trial? Do you have an opinion on that? Who stood out to you as the best, like in front of a jury?
Oh, certainly on prosecution is Nick. They're all good. Latrell, I thought, well, I'm going to be positive.
All right.
Yeah.
How about on the defense side, Baldwin, Rosie, or Auger?
I think Baldwin. I think Baldwin's more avuncular. He needs to tuck his shirt in.
Oh,
that was a bad
Wow,
one.
what was? We want to know these details.
he spent a whole day with his shirt untucked.
In the back or the front?
In the back. It was hanging out
In
of
the
his
back.
jacket.
Okay, real quickly. So
Right.
Carroll County courthouse, the courtroom. Hannah and I were sitting on the. If you're looking at Judge Gull, we were sitting on the right hand side behind Richard Allen, and there were 3 chairs on the prosecution side at their table, and there were 4 chairs at the defense table. The 3 chairs at the prosecution side all matched. They're the pictures that, if you look at the official, pictures of the Carroll County Courthouse, they're all uniform chairs. But for some reason, something must have happened to a couple of the uniform chairs, because they were all mismatched chairs on the defense side, and it was a really big problem for me the first day to let my OCD overcome that. But I did get past it. But no, then you have Baldwin get up there with the back of his dress shirt just hanging out below his suit all day long, and then 5 minutes before court ended, he tucked it in.
Yeah, so can you say that again? So as you're in the gallery, Judge Gull is up here. So you're saying on the right-hand side is the defense with Richard Allen, close to the jury?
So if you are sitting, if you're looking at Judge Gull, the jury boxes, because it's small. I mean, the jury box would be then to Judge Gull's left.
Yes.
Right there, and it's perpendicular to basically the defense table. So the jury is, what would you say, Hannah? 7, 8 feet from?
Don't ask me to do that. I don't know. The jury's off.
The jury is it's literally right there, and the jury box is to the immediate right of the door when you walk into the courtroom.
So at the defense table, what was the lineup of the 3 attorneys, and where was Richard Allen in
Between them.
between Rosie and Walden?
Yeah, it was
on the
Rosie,
right, Allen, and then Rosie, Ashay next to Auger or whatever next to Rick, and then Rosie on the far side.
Inside? Okay.
well, and when she says far side, that she means the first chair. Rosie was in the first chair, closest to the aisle, and then there was Auger, then
Rick Baldwin.
Rick Allen, and then Baldwin kind of was around the side.
Yeah, he would sit to the side.
And
so
then
Baldwin was the closest to the jury box.
Yes.
yes, and on the prosecution side, it changed because it was either Nick or Diener, but one day it was Nick, then Latrell, then Diener. And then the second day, it was Diener was in the lead chair. Latrell was in the middle, and that was the day that Nick did Nick even speak this
Yeah,
this
nothing
day?
the whole time.
I mean, he was sitting at the end because he kind of let them run the entire show that day.
Yeah, so it seemed like for each of the three attorneys took on separate motions.
Right.
Correct? Yes. Okay.
Which I think is one of the reasons it would be hard to pick which ones I would want to hear at the trial, because like Luttrell I thought was good, but he was the least memorable to me, and it might have just been because that the hearing that he was in charge of might have just been less interesting to me.
Mhm.
And same with OJ. There were certain personality things that, you always pick up on with attorneys that that you would do differently. I was myself was very personally surprised by the impression that I had over the defense attorneys after having watched them and listened to them for so long, and read their filings, to then see them in person. And I'm not usually wrong. I'm not usually off about people, and my feelings on the two and the roles they probably play in that relationship, it definitely kind of flipped a little bit than I had expected it to.
In what way? What do you mean?
I think that when I think that I always looked at, and this was just maybe a personal observation, but I think I always looked at Brad Rosie as being the more kind of the more by the book professional, like head down, get to work kind of guy, and that and Baldwin was the more kind of like, I'm gonna make a spectacle out of things, and just like a showman a little bit. And when I saw them in person, Andrew Baldwin is incredibly charismatic.
Yeah.
He's incredibly professional sounding. He's also very connective. Like, I can see where he could easily connect with a jury, or whoever he's talking to. He's engaged. I was impressed by Andrew Baldwin, and I found elements of Brad Rosie's presentation to be a little bit more snide in a way sometimes. Not like my impression of him came off very differently than I thought it would.
Yeah, I think Andy, like, if just from the point of view of who might a jury best
Andrew Baldwin,
like, connect to, without a doubt, I agree with Aspen that Andy presents as, like, in acting, we talk about cold actors and hot actors, and then actually you can be just as much of a movie star if you're cold or if you're hot. It doesn't matter. But like, a good example is Paul Newman is. I'm not going to compare Andrew Baldwin to Paul Newman, but he's a hot actor.
I'm going that far.
But he's affable. You attach to him.
You do.
You go right for him. You feel like you know him. You feel like, whereas Redford can be a little, I'm thinking of Butch Cassidy and Sundance, can be standoffish as a cold actor. I thought Rosie was like Sundance rather, and that's a bad analogy, but Andy, you just connect with, you believe him, you kind of.
There's an authenticity to his personality.
There's an authenticity to him.
I might not agree with everything he says and does, but I will say that, like, I think at one point, one of the days I wrote, like I get, like, some of that is which we all have it in our work style, that it's kind of a shtick we all get into with kind of the way we interact with people. But his is very authentic, but he's got definitely a style about him.
But also, I think I'm sorry, Aspen.
Whereas Rosie, I felt like, he just presented very differently than I really had thought he would.
I think if you put Rosie, he falls more in the category of a McClelland, age-wise, look-wise. That McClelland will eat him for breakfast, but
eat him for breakfast.
Yeah.
Rosie
was long-winded about stuff. I'm like, this is getting tedious. Andy's not. Andy's like, okay, so we've got it. We're moving forward.
Well, I thought
43
Anyway, we
Baldwin
can do
started off
this.
one of the hearings by talking way too much.
Yeah.
But it's funny that people focused on that because the second morning, Rosie spent 43 minutes giving an overview of what he talked about the day before. And it was all repetitive stuff we'd already heard the first time. So people keep referencing this, that, Baldwin went on this it was a 35-minute survey or kind of like preview of things that we were going to hear on the third day. They both, because you said the third day, right, Tom?
Yeah, one of the days, yeah.
The third morning started out with a summation of events from the second day. And then when they started the motion in limine, they both sides gave a small opening statement, basically. And I mean, yeah, it was long, but it was a long day. So there was a lot to do an overview for. Because, I mean, at one point when they were listing the witnesses they were going to call and things they were going to discuss, I put a big star on my note and wrote, "This is going to be a long day."
Until you lost your notebook.
Oh, that's right. Someone stole my notebook because my notes were so
Profound.
I heard that they were being passed around the courtroom and photocopied. But
Seriously?
I mean, turns out a Hollywood writer and producer might have been more interested in what I'd written than anyone else.
It was a necessary evil that had to happen.
So when you guys were talking about,
is it sad though that I was like,
what's sad is you believe that your notes were so fucking fabulous that you had to steal them.
Sorry.
So you guys were just talking about Rosie and Baldwin. Somebody said that they were in the courtroom and it seemed like Richard Allen liked Baldwin more than he liked Rosie. Did you see anything similar where Rick was kind of acting maybe a little bit upset with Rosie compared to Baldwin?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Did you have a thought on that, Hannah?
Mm-mm.
I did note a lot of in my incredible notes. I did note a lot of the body language between people, and I think that what they might be referring to is the fact that Rosie was sitting in the first chair, so OJ was between Rosie and Richard Allen, so just the physical closeness to them was more difficult for them to interact, whereas Baldwin was sitting, on the corner there directly next to Richard Allen. And honestly, for most of the 3 days, either OJ or Rosie kind of handled the presentation. So it allowed for Andrew Baldwin to be sitting, personally alone there with Richard Allen. But I noted over the 3 days that they seemed to have a very trusting, very casual, comfortable relationship where, there were oftentimes Andrew Baldwin would have his hand on the back of Rick's chair. They would be whispering, kind of interacting. So, I mean, they definitely did have a bond.
They have a rapport, yeah.
Yeah, a rapport. Thank you.
Can you guys each also describe Rick's appearance all 3 days and his behavior? Did he change over each day? What was your main takeaways from seeing him in person for the first time? Hello?
I really tend to, I'm going to be very, I really don't like it when there's like lots of comments. He was doing this and that meant this and that. I just don't buy into any of it. I don't know. I couldn't see. I understand people were saying that he glared at them specifically. I think Rick Allen was in a fugue. I don't think he was deliberately glaring at anybody. He certainly has. He's a scary looking guy because of his eyes. I mean, he doesn't look to me like a well-hinged person. But I have no comment as to he's been in solitary confinement for X amount of time, or he's a very, very sadistic killer. So all of those are true, and both of them could be true at the same time. So I have no opinion about what his mental state was. Or
Aspen, how about you?
I agree. Of course, it's hard not to notice his stature when you first see him, because he is a small individual. And anytime you see one that is small and they're shackled and surrounded by 6 bigger guys, they're going to even look probably smaller. He did look different. The last time we saw a picture of him was from the May 7th hearing, which he had the beard and um, and he had his head shaved, Buzz, I should say, with a little bit of stubble. The first morning, he of course, he seemed a little. I mean, I thought he looked coherent all 3 days.
Yeah, he did. But his
Yeah,
eyes are, everybody's saying that, and I agree with that. His eyes are really scary.
his eyes are like, I don't, even if he was just my normal CVS technician,
Yeah.
like I would know. I'd be like, oh, I got waited on to by the guy with the eyes. But so they're unsettling. I did have it. I felt like we locked eyes a few times. I didn't take it as him glaring at me. I just took it as he has a very intense look about him when he does make eye contact with someone. I can see where it could be interpreted as someone feeling like they were being glared at, but because it's so intense. But he definitely did, like look around and kind of see who was there. He several times, would look back and acknowledge his family, for different reasons or different times. He looked up at the ceiling. He did all of the things that we've heard in the past about, looking around.
Well, as Hannah said, I think, I mean, and it's understandable if he's in a cell by himself all this time, like to be out in public around people, obviously he's going to act a little
Right.
bit, I don't want to say weird, but it's a totally different environment for him.
Right. And it's been a while since he's been in the Carroll County Courthouse. He's been in Allen County a few times, but I will say that the interaction between him and the deputies that were handling him seemed very like he was very accommodating to them. They were very accommodating to him. I saw no I saw no aggression or anything. Like
No,
there was a lot of he did have pink handcuffs on, which I thought was funny. And then once he was seated with the attorneys, he would sit down. He was directly in front of me, so I could only really see his face when he would look to the right or left. Hannah was behind me and one seat over.
Yeah, one seat over.
So you had a little bit of a better view probably of his profile. Because I could only see when he literally would turn to glare at people, kidding, or look back at Kathy and Janice, who were sitting in the same row.
Yeah, I was watching them a lot. That's right.
And it was hard for me to see them because I kind of would have had to have done this.
Which I did, leaning forward. Bad girl. Yeah, I agree. But they I'm sure that they've all been coached. Do not.
Right.
Do not, gesticulate or give anything up.
Right. The one thing I did take note of is
this poor Chuckleberry Finn, though.
I know, I've been trying for 40 minutes to get to
it. Stated Abby suffered a head wound, as in a blow to the head. Aspen, please.
Was it stated this?
Sorry, yeah, I've been trying to get to this comment for 40 minutes, but
I don't think it was, but I did want to say one thing though quickly about I thought that Richard Allen looked younger in person than he did in any of the pictures I've ever seen of him.
So right now he's like 51, correct?
Right. And it's a personal thing, but it was something I noticed that when I saw him, I was like, I can see where people might think this person looks younger or older compared to,
Well, he's been through.
Of course, he was much heavier in 2017, but the Richard Allen I saw 2 weeks ago looked younger to me than any pictures I've ever seen of him.
And one other thing about Abby, Power of Banana says one girl, Abby, wearing both bras. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
But isn't it possible that Abby was wearing 2 bras before she went to the trail?
What?
No. Well, here, let me ask.
Why?
So what?
Well, some people said a sports bra. I don't know. Like, don't women wear a sports bra and another? No.
What other okay, so this is speculative, but if no, I mean if they if the blood splatter expert could say that with 100% ascertain that she had been at least partially nude, what thing could make him know that other than the bras?
So we would have to wait and find out
Like,
if it
because
really
he's
was
only
really
testifying
bra.
to what blood's on, because he's only telling the story from what the blood tells. So there had to have been something about, because she was still wearing her pants. There had to have been something that took place that made him know.
Well, I mean,
that some,
her torso could have been dirty. Her, but if she was disrobed from the waist down, there would be signs of that on her body.
right.
It's not just the bras.
Hannah,
So,
people appreciate you and your documentary here.
oh,
Yeah.
that's very kind. Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah, sorry, I would have kind of fallen like 40 minutes behind, but hopefully
Yeah.
you're all appreciating the testimony by Aspen and Hannah. We're at 1 hour and 55 minutes. Can you guys go another half hour and then we'll maybe wrap up, or I'll let you guys go.
I'm fine.
All right.
This is like half of one of our phone calls.
Oh, shut up. That's me. You're pointing the finger at me.
Yeah,
Tom, why would they do this?
Hannah called me at 9:30 at night, and I looked at my phone where it says at the top how long the phone calls lasted, and it said 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I just said, this is the longest phone call I've ever been on.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
It was like 12:30 in the morning. Okay.
Your minute is off.
And how many missed calls did you have from me during that period, Hannah? That's who you were talking to for that 2 hours.
I just need to run concepts so you guys can beat me back into logic.
Wow. But okay, really quickly. So when I met Tom in May, I said, Tom, well, if you just give me your cell phone number, we could text, like, and it'd be easier than email.
Oh, no.
Tom says, I like email.
No, I read my emails as they come in, so it's like the same thing as text. But I don't like the noise that a text makes, because I always try to reply as soon as possible, and it triggers me. So next up, Annabelle Stealth. Hannah, do you know the case of Hannah Payne? Any opinion?
I do not, but
No.
I'm writing it down. I do not.
Sorry, I'm just looking for some other comments.
Hey, so I want to bring something up, because I would love for people to explain this to me, and it's not facetious. And Tom, I don't think you did explain it to me, even though I drilled you on it. Okay. Tell me how the phone got across the creek and it wasn't destroyed by the water.
I mean, that's a good point.
Is she carrying it up? Where is it? Where's the phone? I mean, how does it not get destroyed crossing that creek? Somebody fell at some point. And
it was in the canoe.
Oh, you're going to really fucking get it now. You laugh all you want to laugh. There's two things that I'm telling you. Why were their clothes not wet?
How do you know that?
We don't know they weren't.
I do know that.
Well, how do you know that they didn't examine them in the autopsy?
I do know that they did examine them, and they were described as damp.
Well, if they walked through Deer Creek, they can find if there was sediment from Deer Creek on their...
I know. Well, yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the tracks that went down from the thing. I'd like to count out the 32. Somebody count out those minutes, by the way. If they are so clear that the steps started taking place at 2:13, count the steps out, and you tell me where she was. Count the steps. You've got the phone. You've got the Apple Health data. Count the steps. Actually go to the South Side law enforcement and count your steps.
Well, they kind of did, as far as they made it clear that there's no GPS on it, but that yes, they could have that the time could have gotten to where they were found, but it also could have just gotten to like the private drive. So you could still, if you're going off of only the Apple Health data, make the argument that phone stopped moving because it's where the girls died, or you could make the argument that phone stopped moving because it was put inside of a vehicle and left. I mean, if that was where your mind was going, you could make the argument for either.
No, I think it's possible that, no, I don't know what the hell happened. I think it's 90% certain they crossed the creek, but I just have huge problems with it, as I've always said. Getting out of that creek, I mean, I don't want to get Grasso on. Grasso will tell you they didn't cross the creek. It's not across the creek.
What advantage does, and I'm not being argumentative, what advantage does anyone have to say they crossed the creek?
Because it blows up the crime. Well, there's a huge advantage. It blows up law enforcement's entire timeline if they didn't.
How does their timeline change?
Because they have to fit the crime happening between 2:30 and 3:30. They don't have an autopsy with time of death. If they can't fit the time in between that, then the Sarah Carball, whatever thing, it doesn't put them on 300 at the 4:07 time that they need. But another question that I have for you is, am I reading it correctly that at 2:38 or something that the black Ford Focus is seen going toward Ron Logan's property?
No.
Yeah, it's in an affidavit.
Yeah, I told you at 2:27. I think it was it
2:32.
No, 127 is the Hoosier
No,
Harbor.
Tom, look it up. 2:38 Ford Focus.
I know all this stuff by heart. According to the PCA, at 1:27 p.m., Hoosier Harbor Store has a car resembling Rick's headed toward CPS.
Right.
You just said something about 2:30 that has absolutely nothing.
Somebody will find it. It was somebody did. It's in a document.
It's not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna find it, Tom, and send it to you and give you a coronary.
Well,
it was.
I've read every single thing. There's never been any kind of mention about Rick's Ford Focus leaving CPS, which is
Black Ford Focus left Hoosier Hardware at 2:38 p.m. It's seen on the Hoosier Hardware headed toward Ron Logan's property.
Is that a note or a legal document you just read?
The legal document. Somebody will find it. I watched it last night or 2 nights ago, and I will find it. Yeah, I know. I mean, I've never seen it either. It's I don't know. I was talking to somebody and pulled it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna. If you send it to me, I would love to see it. But
yeah, I'll find it for you. But
nothing I've ever seen is nothing I've ever heard.
I swear I'll find it. It was somebody called, I forget. It was one of the YouTube people, and they put the screen up oh, you're going to be obnoxious about that. Okay. Oh, grab your pro.
Never trust the YouTube person.
No. It's in an affidavit. It's legal documents, and it says that I'll find it.
I've read like every single legal.
Oh, I know you have, Tom, and you've done your Excel statements. So when I prove that you're wrong,
why nobody else is talking about this? I
don't do Excel statements.
I'll say I'm wrong. I'll say I'm wrong.
I'll wait for it. So next comment, Nevada Tan. What else have the defense got to rely on besides odinous? Because if they've changing tack again, sorry. Yeah, so that's a good point. It's like, it seems like law enforcement, and even McClelland says anything the defense is going to present that he can debunk about odinous being at the crime scene, or Kegan Kline, or Ron Logan. So I don't know what the defense is going to say, because as I mentioned, there's never been any kind of alibi for where Richard Allen was at 2:13 p.m.
Maybe
exactly.
Maybe we'll suddenly hear of one if they don't allow that in. But my gut tells me that from the clues I've seen over the last 8 months, that if that's not allowed in, that the things that they're going to rely on are the fact that one, I think they're just going to try to destroy the timeline. I think they're going to throw everything they can at the wall to see what sticks, as far as putting doubt in the jury's mind that the murders happened on that day, that they ever took place the way that we're told. I think they've, the time of death they're going to use very much so, if they can, to paint doubt in the jury's mind. And I believe they're going to, really just say that, we can't tell you what happened to Libby and Abby, but we can tell you that because of all of these things, there has to be reasonable doubt our client is innocent.
But what I keep going back to is Richard Allen's noon to 1:30 timeline does not add up with these 4 girls who walk the entire trail to the bridge, take a photo of the bridge at 12:43, when Richard Allen said, I went to platform 1 and then I sat on a bench. They never saw him on a bench. They never saw him on the bridge. They never saw him on the trail. I mean, as a member of the jury, that's not good. I mean, you can bring up all this other stuff, but Richard Allen saying I was there starting at noon, and I just happened to pass 3 girls around the same spot. 4 girls passed Bridge Guy 90 minutes later. I stood on platform 1 90 minutes before Bridge Guy, who was wearing the same exact stuff as me. And I left CPS, where I parked next to the building, around 1:30, and then some other guy matching me parked in that same unnatural spot. I mean, it just doesn't add up to me. But I mean, there's so much other things that are going to be presented at the trial, so we'll wait and find out. So JMW, other than the medical issues inside of custody, was any medical issues of Rick discussed? Just his mental state, and he took Prozac previously, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, there were
When he came in, she just gave a diagnosis of what he was like when he came in.
yeah, I mean, the only things they said that she was aware of prior cardiac issue or condition, but they did give a background of his mental health, an overview of his mental health history that that we previously didn't have confirmation on. So, I mean, I don't know if you want me to say those things or not. I mean, someone's.
Well, I think in my summaries, I said he had at least 3 different mental disorders, correct?
Disorder. I mean, the wording that was used by Walla, and a lot of it was, it definitely was implied that way. But I was looking for some of the actual diagnosis, like the terms, when the people were talking about this codependent thing, or codependency, what's it called, CDP, codependent, whatever it is, CDB or something. I could find no confirmation that was ever a
Diagnosis.
a clinical diagnosis he had. It was referenced as, just like, there was a reference when Wallace said that he exhibited signs of, she had written in her notes at one point that she thought he even might have bipolar tendencies. But that doesn't mean he's bipolar. It just means that she questioned it. And same with some of the psychosis. They did say he, was a SD, what's it called?
SMI.
Yeah. So, but as far as clinical diagnosis, I really just saw depressed and
No, she diagnosed him with major depressive
disorder.
And she said the OCD stuff was her takeaway from his connection to what she believed to be the family relationship, particularly with Kathy, as far as the codependent relationship potentially.
And that he had been hospitalized in 2019 for
anxiety and major depressive disorder, which is sort of your grab bag in mental health diagnostics in a sense. Unless you're diagnosed with schizophrenia, it really doesn't matter, bipolar 1 or 2 and that kind of stuff. But
that's going to be huge when it comes out, to see exactly when in 2019 he went, either before or after that.
Why is that going to be huge? I mean,
is it relevant?
I think it would be if it was if there's a huge update in this case where you're the killer, and that's in April 2019, and it comes out that May 2019 he had a breakdown.
Oh, well, that stuff drives me nuts, Tom, because you're never going to be able to get into the internal mindset of why to even waste your time on that, because you can't prove that because he heard more information and they changed the sketch to this.
Well, I'm not going to say that they're going to do it in the trial, but I mean, I think, if he had to go into an institution because
his dog died, he got in a major fight with his wife, his kid told him she doesn't love him anymore. I mean, there's a million things that you can, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you're never going to find the linkage there.
I mean, as a writer, any one, or your creative type, any one of us could, I could create an entire story in my head about how, this had sat with him, and then the second presser came and they changed directions, and he was still reeling from Brittany getting married the year before, which had been part of his original motivation behind the crime to begin with, and how that that then triggered this goes to the hospital. So I mean, you can create whatever you want. Just I don't know if there's relevancy to the dates of that, unless there is.
The Hal doll. Well, you see, this is where I start getting. Tom's like, Hannah, you kept it together and were polite for X amount of time.
You could do your thing.
What is very relevant to me is to find out whether they gave him Haldol previously, like when he was put into a psychiatric institution. I don't know that you can get that under HIPAA, but Haldol is specific. It's an antipsychotic medication that is used typically for schizophrenia. So if he was manifesting signs of schizophrenia, that would be relevant if he was diagnosed. But I don't know that you can get that HIPAA stuff released from the past. I'm actually surprised that they can get all this in now. I mean, there's federal HIPAA violations potentially. I don't know the law at all. I'm just very surprised that his mental health stuff is being so, Hache also asked Cicero on the stand what medications he was on, which I was like, oh my God. I mean, that was about she was going toward the sort of viscosity of the blood flow, of his blood flow having taken. It's like, this to me all sounds very like territory you shouldn't be in. But the Haldol thing is important because they gave him Haldol to basically tranquilize him from a schizophrenia breakdown. And that could go to paranoia and all that kind of stuff. So if they're going to allow it, I'd be looking at that if I were the defense. Was this guy in a hallucinatory state, hearing voices, when he was making his confessions, because it appears you gave him a heavy dosage of Haldol, which does interact with Prozac. And you can get this thing called tardive dyskinesia, which is your tongue kind of twitches. And I know that Wallace said on the stand that he was stuttering. He had developed a stutter, that his knees were buckling. That could all be side effects to potentially being overdosed, not deliberately in any way, but, it could be that Dr. Martin, who I think is a prescribing psychiatrist at the institution, came in, opened up his folder, because he does not meet with the inmates. Walla gives him her referral, and then he prescribes whatever according to that. If he looks up Richard Allen's docket and sees he's 240 pounds, but now we're in April of 2023, and he prescribes dosages for 220 pounds or 240, not 140 or 150, he would be in a sort of hypercatatonic state with potentially big side effects. So I think it's very relevant if he was, and she should be able to ascertain that. Was he hallucinating at the time? Like, those are the questions I wanted the defense and the prosecution to be asking. If you're going to bring it up, don't bring it up and suppose like, oh, Richard Allen was faking it. He was eating his feces. Well, if a trained professional is telling you he's not faking it, he's not faking it.
Well, Wallace said maybe she thought he was faking at least memory loss.
Well, memory loss is a lot different than eating your own shit. I mean,
yeah, and there were multiple times when she and others, did question whether his behavior was sincere. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt in the fact that he was going through a major psychotic situation, but she doubted whether some of the actions he was doing to exhibit it were sincere or not, which takes a very strong level of, I'm not a mental health professional, but it takes a very strong level of self-control to be able to, one, be in a state of psychosis and still cognizant enough to know how many meals you can skip without getting put on a
but she didn't say he was in a psychosis state during that time. The point about the control thing, I think, is super relevant because it goes to this guy being a control freak on a profound level.
Right. Well, like, remember, she didn't know. I'm sorry.
No, that would go to this kind of violent crime committed in the way that the sexual perversion and control element and, doing what he may have done. So I thought that was interesting in the context. He knew exactly that he could eat up to 3 days. And if he went 1 day more, that they'd have to tube him or intubate him or give him a IV on that. And he was proud of the weight that he lost.
Yes.
That was what he could control.
Yeah. And when Walla asked him why he was doing it, he said, to control my circumstances, which tells me a lot about someone's personality. But that might be because I'm looking for signs of his personality. I noted there were things that, she said, like in one breath, or, he seems more cognitive than ever with certain things, but then, he doesn't know if Easter has come or gone yet, and doesn't know, like, so there were a few little examples she threw
Yeah,
in
I agree.
about inconsistencies in his state of health, of mental health and behavior not matching.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to finally hear exactly what he said, which details did match up
I
to
want to know.
only the,
That's all I want to know.
and in relation to like this breakdown, what kind of medication he was getting. And like I said before,
Or is that,
in November 2022, soon after he was arrested before whatever, this mental breakdown, why would he tell his wife, if this gets to be too much for you, let me know and I'll tell the detectives what they want? Like, why would he? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
well, if you're Brad Rosie, you would say it's because he is a selfless,
Mhm.
and that's the most chivalrous thing you could do for your family. And if you're Nick McClellan, you say that he said that because he's guilty and he wants to spare his family the pain of going through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all these interpretations they're well, first of all, that we love them because we're trying to get into the mindset of somebody who's in that state to murder these innocent girls. But at the end of the day, we're in trial territory now. So all the suppositions and all that stuff, it's war. It doesn't matter if the defense thinks they're guilty or innocent. As heinous as that is, it just doesn't matter. And they're going to manipulate and bring in expert witnesses. At the end of the day, it's going to boil down to what the jury connects with. I mean, if the state does have that evidence that we're all dying to know, which is that these confessions, if Harshman, without a doubt, can state that he said something and the following is what he said, that only the killer would know, then it's game over.
Well, and not only that, he said he said he has them in transcript and or camera.
Absolutely. But then you do have to go back to everybody says he didn't have the discovery. That's not true.
Well,
it depends on what discovery he had.
Right. Nobody knows what discovery he had. So I'm just saying that's going to be what the defense is going to say, which is, of course, he had access. He also said they were shot and they weren't shot,
And if you remember, and the word discovery isn't actually the word they used. The word they used was legal documents. So,
yeah.
Was he actually given discovery, or was he actually given, all of the most recent legal documents that had been filed in his case, such as the Franks memorandum and all of those things?
Well, he ate some sheet of paper. I mean, I don't know what was on it. No, he did.
No, I know, but I'm just, I hear a lot of people talk about that he was given all the discovery. I'm like, first of all, wasn't given 26 terabytes worth of information to put in his cell, and second of all, I'm like, I don't see it stated in a legal document that he was given discovery. I only see it referenced as legal documents.
Oh, well, this is interesting. This is just a sidebar with the woman that I spoke, the defense attorney that I referenced, this Novella Nedoff. She said that she typically would not allow her clients to have any access to physical discovery. And the reason for that is that they could potentially get out to inmates in the system that would use it, therefore, to, force the person to potentially confess or not, or give details that he said this, and it has to be him and they've in fact had access to the discovery. So she said she typically would send somebody in, a paralegal, to go in and read the discovery to her clients, not ever allow that discovery to stay well, he's in a prison, he should have been in jail. But right. So that was interesting to me that she said that for that reason.
Well, I mean,
discovery is like a big thing, and
well, and that was a concern that Dr. Walla had, if you remember the part of her testimony when she said that because she said a lot of things to Richard Allen. Like she had let him know that he had supporters on social media, but one of the specific things that she said to him was she knew that he had received legal documentation and information about the case. And she made him aware of a YouTube video in which an individual said, hey, the guy is here, or he's in here with us. And so at some point during her care with Richard Allen, she was afraid that during the time that Richard Allen had access to information within those documents, she wanted to make sure because it was at the time that he was also confessing to everyone, that he should stop talking to people because if people could potentially leak it out onto YouTube. So I mean, that was the conversation that she had with Richard Allen. And I have it like written down like exactly what it was, but because I, of course, in the court was trying to sit there, I think, okay, I was like, what YouTube video was that? And I even looked behind me to the other side of you was the Murder Sheet podcast, and I was like, kind of like, and then they were kind of like, you could tell we were all thinking like, whose YouTube video is that, or like, what are they, what was she referring to? But that was mentioned about the her being afraid that if he had access to this information, then could it get out to other people within the prison system that would then put it out publicly?
Well, some of it did, in fact, but the other thing that I just the community at large is so divided on this case, and it's so vitriolic. But the thing that I don't have any idea. The thing that I think is going to be very interesting at the end of the day is if it really comes out that they have a confession, and there's no way this guy had access to it. He is the killer. Then I want the psychological studies of this guy, because he is beyond organized in his this is an interesting, and I hate to be cavalier. This is a gruesome.
Nope.
I mean, I think I get a pass on this, because if I didn't have feelings for the family and what happened here, I wouldn't have been doing it for 7 years.
Right.
But there needs to be, this is sort of a new category.
Absolutely.
If this guy really is a first-time killer, I would really like the prosecution to have potential. I know people have said, I think Kelly had said that there's indications he might have been like trolling girls outside of a laundromat and stuff. Like, were there indications? I'm just saying, from a purely psychological study of killers, this case, like everything in it, is standalone. It's
a standout for Mindhunter, because I left the hearing. I've always thought control played a big part in this.
Yeah,
thing.
I agree with you.
I've always thought it was sexually motivated, and Richard Allen never fit into a lot of those things. And I agree. I think that from things I've learned now, regardless of who the killer is, I feel like this was a very organized crime. More because it's always been up in the air as far as. And again, I'm not I'm not qualified to make that statement, but. I think this was very organized, and I think that it's at a different level of control, to the point where they've even been able to control the ins and outs of their everyday life to never even be suspected. Like it's like a literal chameleon.
Yeah, it's creepy. I mean, it's creepy,
and no one else can do. Sorry.
And look at the mind games he's potentially playing with. I mean, it's just, but then Keegan Kline played a bunch of mind games.
And then imagine, I mean, let's hypothetically say Richard Allen is the guy, and then to offer the family the pictures for free.
Exactly. All of that.
Wait, what?
Remember when the only thing they remembered about this person was that when Tara went to pick up the pictures of CBS,
Libby's hand.
Yeah, that he didn't charge them
before her memorial.
And when they talked in court about how when he found God, he wanted to give Bibles to the families of Libby and Abby. And I remember sitting in that courtroom thinking, like, I don't care how religious someone is. Mm-mm. If I am the family member of a murdered child,
it shows audacity.
And there's someone 10 feet away from me saying they want to give me a Bible, it would have been hard to stay in my seat. Yeah,
I agree with you, Aspen. That to me really shows a level of like, not just tone, like real psycho behavior. It's terrifying to think that was out there.
And it's heartbreaking, because at the same time, 2 feet away, that there's 2 women that lives are devastated and they're bawling because the person they love so much is the one then being accused of these things. So it was a heavy 3 days.
Yeah.
Anna says, wonder how state is going to handle trying to correlate Bridge Guy's voice to Rick's voice. Well, they have 150 hours of his phone calls, so
Yeah, that's a good point, Tom. I mean, I bet you they pull something and say, there it is.
Right.
Here's
And
a voice
150 to 250.
Yeah, here's a voice expert, my friends. Boom. Mike
and like
Thomas had said to me at one point that because the guy's right there. You're talking to him every day. He's right across the street from the sheriff's office, right? So the CVS. Mike Thomas said that only one time that Richard Allen said something to him, and he said the hairs on the back of his neck just stood up, and he went, that it freaked him out. There was something that, initially he was like, that doesn't sit well.
And why was he so quickly able to shake it off?
What do you mean, Osman? Who, Mike Thomas?
Didn't he reference the he was like, but he's too short. Because that's something.
Right, you're right. He did.
Because that's something that I've heard from other people, that there have been these mentions by other people that have said, that like there was there was an interaction or a comment here or there. And every one of them, though, then is able to say, but he's too short. And I think they kind of dismiss it. Which, again, when it says 5'10" to 6 foot on a wanted poster.
But really told them point blank he was short.
We trust
unequivocally.
Yeah, I mean, and we trust the information that they're put out to us.
Well, let me just go back and
say it again, Tom.
Let me just back that thing up. You said Mike Thomas, for people who don't know, is a former Carroll County Sheriff's Department employee, correct? Who ran against Liggett for the sheriff's election in October 2022. You're saying you talked to him, and during his time working in Delphi, he would go to the CVS pharmacy where Rick worked. And you said he maybe thought Rick's voice matched up to the Bridge Guy voice.
No, he said that there was only one, because I asked him, was there any time, how did you miss it? How did everybody miss it? And I said, wasn't there some time where you maybe, and he said, no, but there was this one weird moment, and then he described it, where he said he just got sort of the shivers or whatever. He just felt like, he got a weird energy off him. But, that's magical thinking, so.
But he explained so he thought maybe this could be.
No, he didn't go to a direct correlation like, oh, this guy could be it. He said he thought about it after, in the same thing that everybody else is doing, running their mind past it, going, how did I miss this guy who was right in front of me? The only other thing I want to say, and this does not go to guilt or innocence, but this idea that, I've seen a lot of people sort of really mock and poo-poo the idea of these Odinists and others. Well, I've interviewed Patrick Westphal. I've sat across from him. I can tell you that Odinism, whether people like it or not, or have any opinions about it, it is very, I'm not going to say it's very prevalent, but it's there. There is a subculture in Indiana, and they do, toss runes, and they do burn things for the gods and the goddesses. And this is not, even though to the outside world, it sounds like, give me a break. Now we're talking about a Norse god named Odin, but it is. And I was just in Iceland, as you guys know, and I did a lot. I talked to the high priest in Reykjavik, who has, an Odin temple, and this is taken very seriously. And the other point is, it doesn't go, and it doesn't mean that every Odin follower is a white supremacist. I think that the state is making a big mistake that I would hit them hard on as a state, which is, so now they're white supremacists, and Abby's mom was dating a black man, and so therefore it was a hit. Like, it starts to become kooky. However, don't discount the fact that there are Odin, and do they sacrifice children? No. But is there a crazy fucking Odin out there who potentially, like, you can't just say just because somebody's one thing doesn't mean that they may not sacrifice a child at some point. If it's a psychopathic killer, they will. So I don't believe that's what happened, but I also believe that the mocking of that is just ill-informed.
Right.
You have to take it seriously, because Nicole Robertson took it seriously. They dumped Patrick Westphal's phone in September. They didn't dump Brad Holder's, which is bizarre, in August of 2023. They lost all of these papers, 70 hours or days of evidence that's just vanished, that they didn't take notes on, nor did they keep the recordings on. You don't know what the Odinists are doing out there. I'm just saying that if people can't, keep an open mind on that. Keep an open mind on the fact that it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, one juror may believe that. And if one juror believes that, the case is done.
Right.
And I just think it's very important that people are respectful of the idea that you have two very intelligent attorneys on the defense, that I understand the vitriol or hating them and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, are they going to present a compelling case that could actually get the killer off? That's where and the other thing I continue to say is the state made ridiculous mistakes in this case. 6 years, it is horrendous. So if you guys don't think that's not going to come up at trial, that's going to come up at trial. And when a
For
jury,
me, the more important thing is the facts about Rick, not the law enforcement mistakes.
No, but the thing is it goes to it goes to believability. It goes to the idea of like, wait, how are we supposed to believe these guys when they were still interviewing up to September of 2023 Odinists, white supremacist Odinists.
Well, they had to go back and do that because.
Well, they had to because Holman lied in his deposition and said that he had never received the 85-page document, right, of the Odinists.
Can I really quickly? I wanted to say that having I agree. I think that Mike Thomas is actually an incredible man. I have so much respect for him. I really.
He's a lovely man. Yeah.
Done with him. It was such an incredible, informative experience, and I'm very grateful for his service and for the position he held in Carroll County for so long. And he's just a cool dude. And and I just wanted to remind Hannah of when we were when we were driving around rural Indiana looking for Patrick Westfall's house. Do you remember all the the different flags and everything?
Oh yeah.
And I have a little video of it's American, Trump, Confederate.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how.
Hannah,
but people are like, Odinist. They don't. Well, okay, you sit. He had knives and a bow and arrow.
And here's Hannah, bleach blonde, Hollywood, writer, producer, and here I am, bleach blonde, bronzer on, 6 foot tall gay guy, and here we're walking into Patrick Westfall's house with no one in the whole world knowing where we are or who we're meeting. So we're just like, it'll be fine.
Okay, so you guys have just referenced speaking to Mike Thomas and Patrick Westfall. Do you want to say why you were doing that or anything?
Not really, not yet. I think people can probably suppose
that you're still interested in the case and trying.
And I'm still interested in the case, and I'm getting interviews.
And we like to talk to interesting people.
Yeah, that's absolutely true as well. That's why we love you, Tom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is
Tom
your chance.
Would say no.
This is your chance to leave. We're at 2 hours and 32 minutes. Do you guys want to finish up at least for your part?
I'm sure we bored the living shit out of people. So
right.
We're saying it's interesting.
It is. I do want to say quickly though, for anyone that has had a conversation with us, anyone that's under a gag order has never said a word to us. They've been very, when we hung out with Mike Thomas, very clear, could not talk about the case. So there was no question in any of that anyone.
Nobody's crossed the line on either side ever.
It's really just made a cool new friend.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, and yeah.
All right, so do you guys want to head out, and I'll just wrap this up in the next 15 minutes by myself?
Sounds good to me. Are you good? I'm going to go.
As long as anyone has any other questions.
I'm afraid I'm going to say something else that's going to upset you, Tom, and then you won't take my calls at 9:30.
Yeah, you better hurry up and leave before that happens.
Yeah, exactly. So shut me out. I don't know how to do it. I'm a tech idiot.
First of all, thank you so much to both of you for joining. I found this very interesting to hear your firsthand perspective of the hearings, and I know people in the chat did also. So thank you both for your time.
That's lovely. Thanks, everybody.
You want to say something nice about me before you leave?
Yes, we love you, Tom. We think you're the best.
Thank you.
I do, at least. I do.
All right. Thank you.
I think you're great. You should iron your polo.
I should iron my what?
Iron your polo. It's wrinkled.
I know. It's I know. Whatever. How dare you? Goodbye. He's gone. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're at 2 hours and 13 minutes. I can't believe I just removed him. Oh, Henry, let me remove her. I'll kick you from the studio. Oh no, she's maybe still watching. Okay. I will go for another like few minutes to hopefully get some of your comments. Question from Anne: is the trial still scheduled for only 2 weeks? It's starting October 14th. I think there's like 3 or 4 days of jury selection. Gull said it should start October 18th until around November 14th or 15th, I think we're currently scheduled for. But at that time, the defense said we need 15 days to present our case. But if they're not allowed to present all these Odinists, Kagan Klein and Ron Logan, what the hell are they going to talk about for 15 days? So we'll see what happens. Continuing with comments. Sorry for all the comments, as always, that I missed. Hopefully you're talking to each other politely in the chat. Hi, Digital. Are there entrances to the trail system 20 feet from the Farm Bureau parking lot? Is that the way the other 3 girls walked to the park from Freedom Bridge? From what I've heard, the 4 girls who were there like 12:30 to 1:30 came from the center of Delphi. Farm Bureau is not the CPS building, which a lot of people argue this point, saying Richard Allen said he parked at the old Farm Bureau building when he talked to the conservation officer. What the conservation officer wrote in the PCA, it says he parked at the old Farm Bureau building. It does not say Richard Allen said he parked there. And this conservation officer is now, I think, I don't know if he's the chief of the Delphi Fire Department, but assumably he was very familiar with, or somewhat familiar with Delphi. And maybe Rick said, I parked next to an old building, which it was revealed that in October 2022, like on the 13th or 26th, when Rick was talking to police, he said, I parked next to an old building. There's only one old building, which is the CPS lot. So it could very well be possible that the Farm Bureau reference is because of Dan Doolin, the conservation officer, and not Rick. What is your question? Sorry. Are there other entrances to the trail system 20 feet from CPS? Well, I was there, and the entrances are the Mears parking lot, the CPS lot, and the Freedom Bridge lot on the opposite side of Hoosier Heartland Highway. Those are the main 3 lots. And if you're going to the bridge to look at fish, like Rick said he was, Mears is the best parking lot to park at. And he said at some point that there were vehicles parked at the Mears lot at the trailhead. But he said he was there noon to 1:30, at least in 2022. And he said he only saw 3 young girls around the start of the trail, totally far away from Mears. And in 90 minutes from noon to 1:30, he never saw any adults. So where are the adults that were parked at Mears parking lot? Which I did a whole video on that called How Did Richard Allen Not See the 4 Girls and Bridge Guy? Which to me, it just does not add up to him telling the truth. And there's various other things in there. Before I forget, thank you so much to Kelly for your generosity. Mar, twice, thank you so much. Taylor, thank you for becoming a new member. Rescue All the Dogs, thank you so much. Thank you. Next comment. Rescue All the Dogs again said dependent personality disorder, DPD. Thank you. We're at 2 hours and 37 minutes. I'll go for another 10 minutes or so. Just looking for some comments that we have not discussed. Hi, Kay. The PCA says a car, quote unquote, resembling. Yeah, there were 2 PCAs. One said resembling and one said appearing to match this 127 Hoosier Harvestor camera. A car Rick was known to own at the time was seen. That's not definitive. A black 4-door sedan. Did he have the only one in Indiana? Ridiculous. Well, as one of my members, Xtina, made a good point, when Rick's car was possessed by police in October 2022, they should have driven it by Hoosier Harvestor camera in the afternoon to show how similar was Rick's car from October 2022 to the one that's on the February 13th, 2017 video. If it's exactly alike, that's not good for Rick. And you're saying, did he have the only one in Indiana? As we've seen before, Rick's car had, at least in October 2022, the hubcaps or rims were black, which normally, obviously, they're like silver. So it remains to be seen how similar that 127 car on video headed towards CPS matched Rick's car. So if the trial's not broadcast, we'll have to wait and see if people in the courtroom can reveal if there was any kind of resemblance to Rick's car. Just looking for different topics here. Atonement says, Dude Allen is involved. If they released the bridge guy photo before he volunteered a statement, then we wouldn't know him ever, probably. But was he a solo hitter or not? Yes, it still remains to be seen exactly when Richard Allen spoke to the conservation officer and exactly how it came about. Apparently, it happened at a local grocery store. And apparently, he may have called police to say, I was there. And they said, okay, meet this conservation officer at the grocery store. I want to know if in that phone call, did he say, I was there 1:30 to 3:30 or noon to 1:30? Based on law enforcement, I'm not expecting them to have that note or the exact time frame. Not DB. Not DB says Judge Gull denied the state's motion for mental health records, but I thought at some point she agreed and the defense agreed to allow the prosecution to have that. That was like maybe 6 months ago or more. Badass American. Was it Abby's idea to go to the trails that day or Libby's? It seemed like they had a sleepover the night before, and I guess they were kind of bored. And it was a Monday. They wanted to have some. They were off from school. They just wanted to get out of the house for, I guess, a few hours. So I don't know that it's been revealed exactly who suggested it. Rescue all the dogs. Cicero, who was the blood spatter expert, was not alarmed by the questioning. He did not stumble for a moment. Hi, Bossy. They are allowed access to his mental health because the defense used it numerous times and full warned them it would be allowed if they continue to do so. Correct. Gull did say that. I'll do 3 more comments. And just again, I'm doing a member live chat tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, New York City time. And for people who are not able to join this one, on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern is a public live chat. After this disaster is going to be finished, I'm going to upload the first 42-minute summary because I'm not going to review that again for the next 2 live chats. And for people who did not know, this Friday is a status hearing. The first part is public. We don't know what it's about. And the second part will be public. So we'll have to wait and find out what was discussed. And depending what's like how newsworthy it was, I'll do a live chat or not. Bossy says Rick's wife is not listed as a witness. I know there's marital privileges, but they obviously weren't together on the 13th. Well, I thought somebody said that she was home on the 13th when he got home from, or no, sorry, she came home from work on the 13th and she was around. I know there's been speculation that her brother died unexpectedly a few months before the murders. And people said maybe her mom was upset. So maybe Rick's wife was spending time with her mom and not at home on the 13th, which would have allowed Rick more time to whatever, commit 2 murders and come home and clean up. So we'll have to wait and find out exactly what happened on the 13th. 2 more comments. Purple Flower says, I don't think it would be to save his family if he did it. Are you saying that to do a plea deal and not go to trial? It would be to save himself from facing the shame. Yeah, I'm just wondering if he truly is guilty. And the reason why he is not formally telling Judge Gull, is he delaying the inevitable to finally be told, okay, these horrible conditions that you've been dealing with in solitary confinement for a year and 9 months, this is every day what you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life, for the next 20 to 30 years. Is he delaying getting that final verdict where he knows he is guilty and that his future is either that or to maybe get found not guilty if one member of the jury does not believe whatever the prosecution presents? One final comment. We're at 2 hours and 44 minutes. Sorry, let's just see. I'm looking for one final comment here. Well, I will say this. Yeah, thank you again to Hannah and Aspen for joining to share their thoughts. I'm just going to end on that. I'll end on a positive note. As always, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to the people who are generous and donated. Thank you to everybody who shared your thoughts. Sorry, I missed a lot of comments today, but hopefully you found Hannah and Aspen joining to be insightful, because I know that I did. For people who are joining tomorrow, I'll see you for my members live chat. And again, on Tuesday, I'm just doing another public live chat for people who could not join today. Hopefully I won't still have COVID on Tuesday or Monday. Thank you guys. See you soon. Hopefully, as always, this trial is headed toward the truth. See ya.